Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Washington County Board of Education. I call this meeting to order and declare a quorum. We have all members present this evening and also our student representative. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce a first grade student who attends school at Sharpsburg Elementary. Her name is Celia Stottlemyre, and Celia is here to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'll stand and do the pledge, followed by a moment of silence. Celia, if you would, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Hello, Celia. How are you?
Good.
Do you have some folks here this evening that you would like to introduce?
This is my mom. This is my sister. This is Grandma. And then my dad.
Welcome, Mom, Dad, Sister, and Grandma. Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking. Would you say those again? I was talking when you introduced those people in the second row. Would you do that again?
Here's my teacher and here's my principal.
Nice. Welcome. Thank you for being here in support of Celia. Celia, how are things these days at Sharpsburg Elementary School in first grade?
Good.
Good? Yeah, so you like school? What's your most favorite thing about school?
Lunch and recess.
Lunch and recess. Good answer. Good answer. I see here that you like animals and history. What kind of animals do you like? There's so many. Do you have a particular kind of animal you're partial to?
I like rodents.
Rodents.
Oh.
Rodents. Well, I was not expecting that. Is there a particular rodent you're fond of?
Hamsters.
Hamsters. Okay. That I can understand. Okay. And I see here that you like to play soccer, softball, and dance. Yeah? Where do you do those things? Are you in an organized group or club that you play softball and soccer and dance? Or do you just do those things in the neighborhood?
I don't know. On stage performance, I do dance.
Okay. Nice.
South County is where I play softball and I play soccer in Boonesboro.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Well, you're quite a busy young lady. Yeah, well, I understand in looking at my notes that your favorite thing to learn about, if these notes are correct, would be ancient world civilizations. Tell me something that you know about the ancient world. One thing that you can share with me.
They did not have all the stuff we have today.
Do you think they had it easier, or do you think they had it worse?
Worse.
Okay. Okay.
Do they have hamsters? No.
Colleagues, do you have any questions for Celia?
I'm just glad we finally got a student here that likes history.
Well,
Yeah, so.
Mr. Stalver's a former history student, so he
Teacher.
loves it, or teacher, and student, but teacher, so he loves history. And we're happy that you love history too, and we're happy that things are going well for you at your school in Sharpsburg, and we thank you for being here Good luck to you. Have a great rest of the year, Celia. Thank you so much. All right, we'll move to our approval of this evening's agenda. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zettmeyer. Any discussion of the agenda? All those in favor of approval? All right, we have unanimous approval of the agenda, and the student member concurs. We'll move to approval of the minutes. We have several sets of minutes to consider.
President Williams, I move for the approval of work session minutes dated Tuesday, January 16th, 2024.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zettmeyer. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the work session of January 16th? No? All those in favor of approval? Okay, we have 6 affirmative. Any abstentions? 1 abstention. And the student member concurs with the affirmative. Go ahead, Mrs. Murray.
President Williams, I move for the approval of closed session minutes dated Tuesday, January 16th, 2024.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zettmeyer. All right, we're voting to approve the closed session minutes dated January 16th, 2024. All those in favor? Okay, we have 6 affirmative. Any abstentions? We have 1 abstention.
President Williams, I move for the approval of business meeting minutes dated Tuesday, January 16th, 2024.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the business meeting dated January 6, 2024? All those in favor of approval? Okay, we have all 7 unanimous.
President Williams, I move for the approval of closed session minutes dated Monday, February 5th, 2024.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. I just lost my pen. My pen's not working, sorry. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zettmeyer. Those were the, remind me, Mrs. Murray.
Monday, February 5th, closed session.
Got it, thank you. Dr. Zettmeyer seconded, closed session. All those in favor of approval? Okay, we have a unanimous vote.
President Williams, I move for the approval of work session minutes dated Monday, February 5th, 2024.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zettmeyer. Okay, we have a motion and a second for the work session minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the work session minutes of February 5th? All those in favor of approval? Okay, we have a unanimous vote with the student member concurring.
Motion is to move for the approval of closed session minutes, open portion, dated Monday, February 5th, 2024.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zettmeyer. These are closed session minutes, the open portion dated February 5th. All those in favor of approval? All right, we have a unanimous vote. Thank you. So all minutes have been approved. And we'll move now to the superintendent's report. Dr. Savine.
Thank you, President Williams, members of the board. I'd like to begin my report this evening with recognition of some of our staff who acted quickly and in a coordinated way in an emergency situation. Their actions ultimately ended up saving the life of one of our students. This kind of teamwork shows the strength of staff teams in our schools. I'd like to ask Dr. Jana Palmer, our Executive Director of Elementary Education, to join us now and share this story and introduce the Boonesboro Elementary staff and their student.
Good evening, President Williams, Dr. Savine, members of the board. As Dr. Savine just shared, we're here to share of quick response and dedication of the staff of Boonesboro Elementary. Brody had an incident in the cafeteria, and they quickly, as a team, just worked together to be able to support him, call 911, make sure the building was secure, make sure Mom was on her way, and he's here today. So we just want to take a minute to thank their staff for just amazing response and effort. So we have Dr. Eric Meredith with us this evening. Blair Jones, who was our quick acting lunch assistant, who realized that Brody was having some reaction during lunch. Angie Schultz, administrative assistant. Anna Lannon, our health nurse. Danielle Dwinells, who is our lead teacher. And Robert Leatherman, the counselor. And we have Brody Fritz, who is our student, who we want to celebrate for being brave during such a scary incident. So we present our Boonesboro team.
Thank you, sir. Hey. Oh, I'm sorry. I was haying him. Sorry, I apologize. There we go, there we go.
All right. Good smiles here. 3, 1, 2. One more. 1, 2.
And continuing on with our recognitions, the next recognition this evening is no stranger to the Board of Education. That's because Boonesboro High School's We the People team is here tonight for their 9th consecutive state championship celebration. Scott Berman, our high school social studies content specialist, will help us honor this team at this point.
Good evening, Dr. Savine and members of the board. Tonight, we would like to recognize students who competed and were victorious at the We the People state competition held in Annapolis on January 10th, 2024. We the People is a simulated congressional hearing providing students an opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge and understanding of constitutional principles and ideas. These students will prepare for early April's national competition. This is the 9th consecutive year that Boonesboro has advanced to the national competition. This evening, we are joined by team members and Miss Ashley Vasick, the team advisor. I'll read the names one at a time. We have a couple of folks that aren't with us in attendance, and I'm going to read their names last. Okay? Starting with Jason Berg. Jackson Berker. Noah Chu. Jacob Doherty. Evan Huff. Anna Jackson.
I'm hungry now.
Trent Jenkins. Aaron Pearson. Emmanuel Sampson. Misha Slattery. Abigail Smith. And their advisor, Miss Ashley Vasick. And participating in the team and members of the team but not able to be here today are students Jacob Davidson, Sydney Gibson, Abigail Hancock, Justin Prenger, Lily Rumpf, Brett Sharpless, Mia Soto, Olivia Taylor, Anaya Tay, Regan Varney, and also student coaches Caroline Matthews, Rachel Norris, and Jillian Zimmerman.
And 3, 1, 2, 3. And the last one. 1, 2, 3. Congratulations.
Once again, congratulations to our Boonesboro High School team, 9 consecutive years, state champions, and we certainly wish you the best as you compete nationally. Thank you. We now have a trio of awards to celebrate this evening in the area of excellence in gifted and talented education. I'm so proud to be honoring Eastern Elementary School as well as 2 students and staff members from our schools this evening. At this time, I'll ask Mrs. Drista Bowser, our supervisor of advanced programs, to give the details on each of these achievements.
Good evening, President Williams, members of the board, and Dr. Sovine. This evening, we would like to recognize teachers and students who were recognized at the state level. The Maryland State Advisory Council on Gifted and Talented Education honored several teachers across the state with the award Teacher Accomplishment in Gifted and Talented Education. These teachers do an exceptional job of meeting the needs of our gifted and talented students and go above and beyond the expectations of their positions. Additionally, they participate in ongoing professional development and demonstrate leadership by coaching and mentoring peers, as well as developing curriculum. The teachers who earned this honor were Kimberly Gravenstein at Williamsport Elementary School and Stephanie Twigg at Williamsport Elementary School. The Maryland State Advisory Council also recognized several students from across the state for their student accomplishments. Daniela Ayanu from Williamsport Elementary was recognized for her high academic performance, involvement in extracurricular activities, and for her winning summer research project around the idea of green living at our county planetarium. At this time, we'd like to take a photo with these honorees from Williamsport Elementary School. The Maryland State Advisory Council also recognized Kaylani Davis from Eastern Elementary for her student accomplishments. She was recognized for her leadership and performance in the classroom, as well as her participation in many different clubs and extracurricular activities. Kaylani's school was also recognized by the state. The Maryland State Advisory Council on Gifted and Talented Education recognized Eastern Elementary School for excellence in gifted and talented education, which gives them EGATE status for the next 5 years. This designation signifies that their program aligns with Maryland's criteria for excellence, gifted and talented program guidelines, and COMAR. Obtaining this award is a significant accomplishment since it takes years of collecting data and artifacts to demonstrate distinction. We would like to show a short video to give some insight into what is happening at Eastern.
here at Eastern Elementary, we are a Title I school in Washington County, and we service students in grades 3 through 5. And we created a program for our gifted and talented students called the Eagle Academy. And our vision for that program is to promote critical thinking in a collaborative environment while also integrating 21st century skills.
So we can help each other and we can learn from each other. And we can also build off of each other.
What we really strive to do is teach students how to think as opposed to what to think. And we do that through a variety of different methods. There are processes that allow for a safe environment and challenge students to find and use their voice. So at any given day, you could walk into one of our Eagle Academy classrooms and walk into a Socratic seminar or a philosophical chairs discussion where the teacher is off to the side and it's the students doing the talking.
It's very similar to a debate, and I get to really share my voice in there because I can make all these connections in my brain and have all these ideas, and I don't just have to keep it to myself, I can share it out.
Being in the Eagle Academy, you can really explain how you think, and you can really show all of your talents, and you feel appreciated.
Our demographics of the Eagle Academy are a direct mirror image of our school community. So we are reaching those underserved populations. We have an extreme amount of diversity within our Eagle Academy program, and we have so much pride in what we do. The Eagle Academy program not only reaches our gifted and talented students, general classroom teachers have the opportunity to sign up for me to go in and model these great protocols, these great strategies for their students. Our Eagle Academy touches all corners of our school community.
The opportunities is not only like other schools. I wish other schools can have this opportunity. Of course, I think other kids should do it.
The data is really showing that these students are really benefiting from these state experiences, not only in ELA, but also in other content such as math, science, and social studies. And we're very fortunate because we're also seeing character development that accompanies that.
The end goal for us is for our students to leave here being happy, healthy, informed problem solvers that can go out into their community and make a positive change.
Can all staff representing Eastern tonight please come forward? Also wanted to acknowledge Mr. Dan Fowler, who was the principal at Eastern when this process was initiated.
Board members, you are excellent. You all are great too. All right, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Last one, 1, 2, 3. Congratulations.
And finally this evening, Monday, March the 4th is recognized as Maintenance Worker Day, and our maintenance staff may seem behind the scenes, but their work is critical to our schools operating smoothly. Mr. Mike Stauffer, our Director of Facilities and Maintenance, will share more about how their roles and responsibilities can contribute to a positive learning environment.
Good evening, President Williams, Dr. Savine, members of the board. I'd like to talk to you a little about Maintenance Appreciation Day. Excuse me. We've all discussed our buildings and infrastructure are aging. As we speak, they're aging. but we can't throw our hands up and stop working on the buildings. Schools require extensive maintenance and care to keep them running smoothly. At any given school, there's an extensive list of maintenance and repair tasks being completed, and countless more just waiting in the wings. So even if the school is perfectly cared for, it takes work to keep it that way. The people that have a direct role in providing the necessary upkeep are our maintenance team members, including plumbers, electricians, HVAC mechanics, carpenters, roofers, masons, painters, grounds crew members, equipment repair, pest control, locksmith, delivery people, and working foremen. Quite a list, right? They really work hard at what they do. These are the people that protect our investments and, most importantly, provide students with a healthy environment to bolster their educational opportunities and support their development. Maintenance employees fix and maintain all systems in and around our facilities. They often conduct many different tasks in a single day. They can work at any number of indoor and outdoor locations, many times in less than ideal weather, and conditions such as rain, snow, and extreme cold or heat are seen often by our maintenance people. So Maintenance Worker Appreciation Day is where our unsung heroes, those working behind the scenes, can move into the forefront and take a bow. Many of them do not like the recognition, but we need to show how much they are appreciated and how important they are to everyone connected to WCPS. On behalf of WCPS, we would like to express our deepest gratitude for your dedication to maintaining our buildings for the students, families, and staff of WCPS. And you are a valuable asset to our school system. You may think that no one notices your hard work, but we do, each and every day. Thank you, and keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. We certainly appreciate your leadership. President Williams, members of the board, that concludes this portion of my recognition.
Thank you, Dr. Savine. At this time, we'll have public comment. So we have some individuals who have signed up in advance to speak. You do not have to have signed up in advance to speak this evening during public comment. I would like to read from Board Policy KD regarding the procedures of public comment during our business meetings. Each person wishing to address the Board of Education is encouraged but not required to sign up prior to the meeting and may address any topic concerning Washington County Public Schools except personnel or student matters which clearly identify an individual or individuals. Individuals wishing to address the board who do not sign up prior to the start of the meeting will be required to sign the log located at the speaker's table. This is for the purpose of the meeting's minutes. Each speaker may speak for up to 5 minutes. And Mrs. Murray is our timekeeper. Mrs. Murray, would you like to explain
Yes,
how timekeeping works?
I have my timer set for 5 minutes. When you have 30 seconds left, I'll raise this card, and when your time is up, I will raise this card.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray.
You're welcome.
First speaker I have on my list is Mr. James Davis. Mr. Davis here? Okay. Taj Smith is the next person I have on the list. Good evening.
Members of the Washington County Public School Board, as president of the Washington County NAACP, I come before you today deeply concerned about possible decisions being considered by this board. It has come to our attention that the board may consider eliminating the Supervisor of Equity and Excellence position, along with the potential removal of other diversity, equity, and inclusion programs within the school district. I must emphasize the critical importance of maintaining and strengthening our commitment to DEI initiatives within our schools. The NAACP Support of Diversity and Inclusion Policies and Anti-Racism Program Resolution from 2023 underscores the significance of DEI in fostering and learning environment where every student feels valued, supported, and empowered to succeed. Diversity includes backgrounds and experiences that each individual student brings to our schools. Equity requires fair treatment for all, ensuring that every student has access to resources and opportunities they need to strive to thrive, regardless of their background. Inclusion fosters a sense of belonging where every student feels accepted and is appreciated for who they are. It is disheartening to witness the efforts that continue to happen in this county to dismantle these essential programs. Recent attacks on DEI initiatives and anti-racism programs at the state, federal levels underscore the urgent need to defend and uphold these principles. Now more than ever, we must stand firm against discrimination and bigotry in all its forms. The Supervisor of Equity and Excellence position plays a vital role in ensuring that these programs are successful. Eliminating this position would be a grave disservice to our students, particularly those from marginalized communities who rely on these programs for support and advocacy. It would be unfair to add the duties of this position to someone untrained and possibly overworked by other duties. This is a huge undertaking that requires a position where DEI is their main responsibility, allowing teachers to focus on educating our students. Research shows that DEI programs in schools contribute to improve academic achievement, reduce achievement gaps, and promote culturally relevant teaching practices. These initiatives also prioritize social and emotional learning while creating a positive school climate. By prioritizing DEI efforts, schools can create environments that support academic success, social-emotional development, and overall well-being of all students regardless of their background or identity. Therefore, I implore this board to consider any decisions that would undermine our commitment to DEI. Please ignore the often loud cries and rhetoric of those who feel that diversity, equity, and inclusion are unnecessary or obsolete. I urge you, along with the superintendent, to continue to fight against racism to fully support equity and inclusion efforts within our school. In alignment with our resolution from 2023, the Washington County NAACP vehemently opposes any proposed legislation, regulations, or policies that seek to diminish or eradicate DEI programs. Together, let us remain steadfast in our dedication to creating a more equitable and inclusive future for all of our students. I do have some time left, and I was told, I have a statement from someone else who wasn't able to attend. She's also a member, and I was told that I could read it, and if you needed me to provide it in writing, I can do that as well. So I would like to read her statement. She says, "Dear members of the Washington County Board of Education, as a parent of WCPS students and a member of the Washington County Diversity and Inclusion Committee, I strongly urge the board to continue to build on the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and not eliminate the position, office of equity and excellence. Having diversity, equity, and inclusion education in our schools is crucial. It promotes a more inclusive learning environment, fostering understanding, kindness, and respect among all students, wherever their differences in thoughts, words, and actions. Secondly, it helps address systemic inequalities, ensuring fair opportunities for all students, regardless of their background, ability, or identity. And more importantly, it prepares all students for a globalized world, teaching them essential skills for collaboration and empathy in an increasing diverse society. I, along with other parents of WCPS, look forward to seeing the Board of Education is committed to provide all students, staff, teachers a more inclusive environment and prepare students to be good and productive global citizens. Best regards, Angela Yamashita." Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. The next person I have on the list is Les McIntosh.
Good evening. Thank Thank you for this time, Superintendent and the board. I stand here today as a member of the NAACP, Vice President. I stand as a part of HARC. I stand as a part of racial diversity. But on today, I stand as not just a citizen, but also as a pastor over congregants. And seeing what's happening worldwide, what's happening even in this county as it is fighting against equity and diversity, I must have stand here saying that the board is not representative of the mass spike in increase in minorities. Understand we're at the place of almost 40% now, 32 with African American and some type, and another 8 with Hispanics, and it continually to grow. And as well as hearing the report from our own superintendent that even with the ELs, the English learning, we are the highest in the state and yet still growing. So we can't stay on the same bike while we're continuing to grow with more people and yet maybe be considering taking away the vehicle that allows us to be a bridge toward that new type of diversity. So I stand here as a concerned citizen, as a concerned pastor for my constituents, where I have not just the African American church, but we also have our own Spanish church as well that is growing, and they are coming in. And it's my job and my operandi to stand, as it tells us to not just to pray, but to watch. So in that watching, I must stand and be the face, if so be, to ensure and show my sentiments of the increase that we should have. And I believe just some data that I read from you all, that even on last year, there was a 64 increase in English-speaking services, 15% in disabled, 200 new EL English learning students. So seeing that increase and seeing that it could move even further, if there ever is a notion of dismantling because of diversity and inclusion and equity, now is not the time. And I've seen on this platform where those have come in and they have spoken against it. But I must stand as an African-American man that is responsible for congregants and have the influence of those. So I must stand as an example. So I stand here today for you all to consider this in your sessions, in your closed sessions, and in the future as it becomes to diversity and inclusion, so you can see the face that represent many others. And I just want to thank you for your time, and that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor McIntosh. The next person I have on the list is Tom Wheeler. Mr. Wheeler.
President Williams and board, I appreciate your giving us the opportunity to speak on a little bit lighter note. I'm here to talk about pickleball and the courts that we have at the Springfield High School. I don't know how many of you are aware. I think everybody's probably now in the commercial seen pickleball, or they kind of have an idea of what it is. It's the fastest growing sport in the United States. It's in every state, every school system. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And what I'm here to do today is try to alert you to some needs that we have at the Springfield courts. They're fantastic, and we really appreciate that the school and the county took those tennis courts and converted them. And if any of you have ever been there, you probably see that they're getting more and more busy each day. The thing that we need that we don't have to make that really a first-class facility is we don't have lights, we don't have a bathroom, and we don't have water, and we don't have any place to sit down and no shade. And that sounds like a fairly large list to do, but a lot of those things we can do at minimal cost. The lighting might be the most. But we've spoken to our community of pickleballers, and it's growing exponentially every day. We think that we can get our group to help raise money to do it. We don't expect the county or the school to do the thing 100%. We're more than willing to get in there and do some of the work. The benefits, if we do this, are immeasurable, because what we can do is we can now help the schools develop a program for the kids. And the byproduct of having kids learning how to play, this is the one sport they can play with you. Whether you're their grandparent or their parent, you can now play a sport with your child, and they'll probably beat you. But you may be able to beat them. And that's kind of an unusual thing to do these days. I have done this. I've traveled. I've been involved with pickleball for 20 years, and I've been all around the country in every state doing pickleball tournaments and selling things and helping schools develop programs. And we put it in St. George, Utah, where I lived for 20 years, in all the schools. And the biggest event was when the kids got to challenge the teachers and play in tournaments. They absolutely loved it. We had a guns and hoses tournament where the police and the firemen each took a kid and played against each other. And that was a big draw for people. So there are a lot of things we can do if we get the proper stuff at the court that will actually, we can bring money into the county. Pickleball is a tremendous revenue producer, which most people don't realize. I work at the Y both here and in Frederick teaching pickleball, playing pickleball. We're running out of space. Everybody's running out of space. And every place that this has been put in, it has been a moneymaker. It's been popular. It's a good thing for your cardio. If you're a doctor, you know this is great exercise. It's very social, and it's something everybody can do. Men can play women, children can play adults. There's no physical advantage to being a big, strong guy in pickleball. So it's really a great sport. So what we would like to do is try to find out how we can reach out or who we can reach out to at least put together a list and see what it would cost to do these things. And then we will help try to raise money to do it. And we hope that maybe there are funds available within your budgets or the county budget to enhance this. The one last thing I would say, what we don't have there that would probably be really important is a defibrillator. Those are extremely important, and from personal experience, I played a guy where I hit him in the chest with the ball very lightly. He keeled over and literally died on the spot. And had we not had a defibrillator, he would have not recovered, but we were able to resuscitate him, and 3 weeks later he was back on the court. But it was only because we had that resuscitation device there, and people were trained on how to use it. So it's kind of something to think about, just because if they're playing out there and somebody gets hurt, there's nothing there really to help them. So, and I can leave my card if anybody wants to call. I'm happy to take calls, questions. We have a group of people who are willing to work, and we will help you. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up, and I appreciate it. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Wheeler.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, the next person, I can make out the first name, but I apologize for not being able to make out the last name. The first name is Amanda. Good evening. Could you tell me your last name, please?
It's Amanda Whitmore. And
Whitmore,
I'm from,
thank you.
Boonesboro.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Williams and board members. Tonight you have on the agenda a recommendation to adopt the superintendent's recommended budget. Balancing all the needs of a school system cannot be easy, and I appreciate the work that you, the superintendent, and staff have put into this. However, the recommended budget you are being asked to adopt as your draft does not include any increased funding to support our struggling readers. Learning to read is a critical skill. The Budget Procedure Policy DB-R includes this statement under budget planning, quote, "The budget proposal should be balanced, consistent with board policy and contract conditions to include provisions for programs that meet the needs of the entire student body." For the past several months, parents have been sending letters to you or testifying here in public that the programs available for dyslexic students in Washington County Public Schools are not working. Teachers have not been given the training they need to implement a program explicitly and with fidelity. We need special education teachers and reading specialists to receive professional development training that the International Dyslexia Association has approved, not just a 3-day introductory course. Additionally, the budget procedure policy under budget requirements states, quote, "At all times, all resources must be used to produce the most positive effect on the student's opportunity to gain a quality education," end quote. A child who cannot read and continues to get passed on to the next grade, getting further behind from their peers, does not create a positive effect for them. Eventually, that child may act out, creating behavior problems in the classroom when all they really want to say is, I can't read. But they can't and they won't because they think they are the reason and that they cannot read, not the school system that's failing them. Now is the time to make changes to the budget before you even adopt a draft. Make a statement that you want to increase the professional development our special education staff receive from just $57,500 per year to $500,000, so that every elementary, middle, and high school has at least someone in there trained to identify and work with dyslexic students. Dyslexic students are in every school, probably almost in every classroom. Remember, 1 in 5 people are dyslexic. Instead of allocating or finding grant funding of $275,625 to pay students reading apprenticeship tutors, use that towards increasing the professional development budget. We support paying students and giving them the experience they need, but when we're facing a reading crisis in our schools, that money should be targeted to train special ed staff in appropriate and efficient dyslexia programs first. Help the most affected first and get their achievement levels up. Additionally, there's nothing in state law that I could find that said a Board of Education's budget request to the county commissioners cannot exceed their maintenance of effort levels. I understand the state's contribution is $3 million less than expected because we are becoming a wealthier county. Request that the commissioners provide more of their budget, the taxpayer dollars, to funding our school systems. Frederick County Board of Education consistently asks millions of dollars more than the maintenance of effort they are required. We can do something similar here. Having a student population that can read increases positive mental health, decreases behaviors, and increases employability. Please work tonight to agree to increase the budget to $500,000 so that you can send more than 5 staff a year to receive Bowman Orton Gillingham Plus training and help our students. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore. Okay, Kristen Morland. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Kristen Morland. I'm a parent of 2 students in Washington County. I'm here today to advocate for the children and their families like my own who have struggled with reading. My oldest son is a 5th grader and is identified with the learning disability dyslexia. Early on in pre-K, my husband and I were told he was not making progress in identifying letters and letter sounds. He continued to struggle in the following years and was identified as dyslexic in the 3rd grade. In the fall of this year, he will be entering middle school and is still working hard to close the reading gap. It is painful as a parent to see your child struggle in school, even more when it affects them emotionally and their self-esteem. He's asked me, how am I going to go to college or get a job if I can't read well? With dyslexia, early detection and intervention are crucial. A study published by the Journal of Educational Psychology found students at risk for reading disabilities who received intervention in the 1st and 2nd grades made gains nearly twice that of children who didn't receive intervention till the 3rd grade. Outcomes for 1st graders were even greater than that of the 2nd graders. As you may know, dyslexia affects 1 in 5 students. That equals to potentially a few thousand children in WCPS who are dyslexic, some identified and some not yet. Imagine being in high school and your reading level is several grades lower. Imagine how hard that would make it to learn in any subject. Science, history. Imagine writing a book report, reading a grade level textbook, doing homework. It must be so hard to keep up, even with supports in place. Think about how it makes these kids feel emotionally and socially. That's all affected too. Imagine being in middle school or elementary school and being years behind. All of these grades are important, and if the reading gap is not closed, it makes learning that much harder. Over the years, my children have had wonderful, caring, and hardworking teachers. We are grateful for all that they have done. What needs reassessed in our county is an effective and timely reading and intervention, and an increased budget for staff training. The reading intervention Bowman Orton Gillingham Plus is to be implemented this fall in WCPS. This is great news. This is a well-known approach considered the gold standard for students with dyslexia. In order to effectively reach the many children who would benefit from it, the budget needs to be raised. Consideration needs to be taken for all of the 25 elementary schools, 7 middle schools, 9 high schools, plus special programs. Children shouldn't have to go years and years reading behind their grade level, especially if a Tier 3 program like Wilson or Orton Gillingham Plus is available, but there simply are not enough staff to help them all. Please consider raising the budget for special education professional development to $500,000 and have 2 teachers per school trained in Orton Gillingham Plus. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morland. Next person on the list, the first name is Fran, and I'm not able to make out the last name of Shay. Good evening.
Good evening, President William and board members. I am a parent of an alumni and a taxpayer of Washington County Schools. Our daughter was identified as a student with dyslexia in 2nd grade, which was 13 years ago in 2011. She is currently a sophomore in college. I wish I could share that Washington County was responsible for her successes and that Washington County provided her with the intervention she needed to overcome her deficits to close the achievement gap. The only program that Washington County had at the time was the Wilson Method, and only one fully trained teacher for all 12 modules across 46 schools. It was highly recommended that students with reading deficits learn all 12 modules at an independent rate of learning so that they can achieve mastery of skills. 30% of students are dismissed from special education within the first 2 years of services. Sadly, our daughter was dismissed in 5th grade and struggled in middle school while entering high school reading at a 5th grade level. She made no academic progress while in middle school. In 2019, 8 years later, and midway through her 9th grade year, she was reintroduced to Wilson, relearned the 4 modules, and completed the full 12 modules with still just one fully trained instructor within Washington County School. Her intervention in 9th grade was supplemented with iReady, which is only a program that helps students to the 8th grade level, and not a program that can help close the achievement gap when trying to dissect a complex English language. Once a student is identified with dyslexia, and in her case, mixed dyslexia, they are dyslexic for life and need a structured literacy reading approach, other interventions, and assistive technology to help them be successful throughout their academic career. Dyslexia is recognized as a learning disability in the state of Maryland, a public bulletin as of 2016, but Washington County still struggles to recognize this legitimate diagnosis, even with parents coming to the IEP meetings fully prepared with testing provided, highly trained, and well-recognized psychological educational evaluators. For our daughter, it was recommended in 2011, and it is recommended now more than a decade later that students with these deficits receive the Orton Gillingham structured literacy approach. We are advocating that now is the time that Washington County adopt, train, and implement Bowman Orton Gillingham Plus structured literary program with a sense of urgency. And as I heard the last speaker, it sounds as if that would be implemented sometime in the fall. Washington County has approximately 22,000 students enrolled in 46 schools across the county. In those schools, 1 of 5 or 17% of your student population are dyslexic. That's approximately 3,700 students with a potential dyslexic disability, approximately 81 students per school. That is a heavy caseload for your special educators, but equipped with the right investment and training, these special educators can provide the tools necessary to help our students overcome their learning deficits and close the achievement gap. It's time for Washington County to take the lead in literacy in the state of Maryland. The ELA results from last year show that Washington County is hovering in the middle at 50% proficiency. While we are not at the bottom, we are surely not at the top. I stand before you more than a decade later advocating for a reading program that has proven itself to be beneficial. This program would benefit all students, not just those with dyslexia and reading deficits. In fact, in my personal opinion, if you standardize your readings to Orton Gillingham, you would proactively be serving the entire student population and all would benefit. This program brings reading back to its fundamentals of providing phonological awareness and decoding skills for a complex language. Our daughter struggled to read and graduated, but was not on a 12th grade reading level. I have spoken with many parents over the years that continue to share the same stories. The time is now. No child should be left behind when there are programs available like Bowman's Orton Gillingham Plus program. This is an urgent call to action. Our children can no longer wait decades to receive adequate reading instruction. We are asking that Washington County seriously consider approving the budget of $500 to be included in the 2023-24 budget to train over 200 teachers in Bowman's Orton Gillingham Plus program. We must move quickly and cannot let another decade go by without equipping all of our students to be able to read at proficient levels. Together, we can help close the achievement gap and make reading a better experience for the next generation of students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jay. Okay, that was the last speaker that had signed up. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward and speak during public comment? Good evening.
Dr. Savine and esteemed board members, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. And also, I want to thank you in advance for your feedback later on and comments. This evening, I'd like to talk about transparency. One of the reasons that Congress continually has abysmal ratings from the American people is their lack of transparency. Reports show that overwhelmingly American citizens want competence and transparency from our public officials. That also extends to our local school boards. According to a Business Insider report, the United States ranked 38th in math scores and 24th in science. In 2020, Global Citizens for Human Rights released their annual study, which measures 10 levels of education from early childhood enrollment rates to adult literacy. The United States failed to crack the top 10. Now, thanks to coronavirus, coupled with the lockdowns and the distance learning imposed on our students by politicians who crave the endorsements of local teachers' unions, or the likes of Randy Weingarten at the American Federation of Teachers, children are even further behind than they were prior, sadly. If you ask a parent how they measure progress at any one time, they'll likely answer that it's based on the letter grades their current student is receiving. The A's, B's, C's, and D's that are part of the GPA-based grading system are an important objective measure that lets both the student and the parent know how they're doing. When it comes to college planning, for instance, B's and C's tell me that my child is not currently a top student, needs immediate corrective action, and if they plan on going to college, they're not going to receive a scholarship. It may also beg the question, is college even right for my child? Why do I mention A's, B's, C's, and D's? It's because our local teachers union president is now hoping to replace our current grading system with something called the 4 C's. This 4 Cs is a subjective pass-fail grading system that minimizes scholastic accomplishment and aptitude in favor of subjective ratings from our teachers. Subjective ratings that could swing wildly from one instructor to the next. Implementing this type of pass-fail system is a further attempt to cover up the lagging performance of our students and failures of our public education system. The tax-paying citizens of Washington County want transparency. They want to hear where each of you, our board members, stand on the proposal to move from the traditional objective GPA-based grading system to the subjective 4 Cs scheme being recommended by the union president, association. Thank you very much. I look forward to comments.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward? Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. At the last meeting, I discussed the teachers' union's call to marginalize academic performance and instead grade children on subjective measures such as creativity and teamwork. Their justification being that employers have changed and are no longer as concerned with a person's academic performance, when in fact, as a manager myself, I assure you in the strongest terms possible that employees with strong academic performance are highly valued. It is a strong indicator of success. After I spoke about the harm these goals will cause our children, one of the union-endorsed, or Apple ballot candidates, as the union refers to the board members who agree with their social and political views, stated that they are tired of hearing the teachers union described as extreme. And this board member said this less than 1 hour after the teachers union made yet a second presentation of more changes it has planned for our children. In that second presentation, they stated that they want a program where selected high school students attend a 6-week training program during the summer, where the union instructs these students on the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Then those students are given leadership roles in clubs at each high school that promotes the principles they were taught. Lastly, the club meetings are held during the school day, and students will have their class time reduced in order to attend. And this believer in, or representative of, the union's political and social views stated even after that how offended they are that the union is described as extreme by moms and dads, grandparents, aunts and uncles. How much more extreme is it possible to be than to deny children the opportunity to achieve their dreams, to deny children the intellectual foundation, to enter any career, to pursue any interest, so you can spend their childhood telling them your vision for society? I understand why you are believers of DEI. Just the title, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Who could disagree with those words? After all, aren't we told that DEI is charitable? It's compassion for the disadvantaged, understanding for the marginalized, it benefits those in need. Just like charitable hospitals run by churches or volunteers at homeless shelters, it represents the highest hopes of government welfare programs. The difference, you've been told, is that DEI brings charity, opportunity, and compassion to everyone. It divides and subdivides all of us into groups, ensuring that each child knows the definition of the group you have placed them in and what they need you to provide them because of the disadvantages you have told them their group is harmed by. DEI, you have been told, is charity and compassion done the way it always had the potential to be. And now, because of you, all those in need have the opportunity to be helped. But then we move away from titles and slogans. We look at what is more than 2 decades of history of DEI policies and their effects on thousands of communities and public schools. What most pops out is that all forms of charity result in a tremendous benefit to the giver and the receiver. There is a direct correlation between how charitable a community is and the increase in the quality of life of the average person in that community. The reason measuring the average result is important is because measuring the average is the most accurate way of understanding how all individuals in that group are affected. And charity results in the average person having a better quality of life Anything that associates itself with that is something we should pay attention to. But there is something that separates DEI policies from charitable policies. Where DEI policies have arrived, the quality of life of the average person has shrunk. You can see it in the public schools that with the longest running DEI policies, the academic performance of students drops. Regardless of how passionately and loudly the proponents of DEI claimed their policies were going to benefit this group or that group, the reality is that the average child suffers. We must be very clear. Decreased academic performance is our children's dreams and the light of our society's future being dimmed. In our state, the school boards with the longest standing DEI policies are among the lowest performing schools with the largest per student spending. And perhaps most tragically of all, the groups that were selected as the justification to ignore the loss of school-wide academic performance as the policies continued show essentially no benefit. Rather, the number of children who suffer throughout these programs in those specific groups are far too often concentrated in those groups. Why? Could it be that telling children they are victims and must be dependent upon you causes a harm to the soul that no amount of budget increases can heal? It is time for the union-endorsed or Apple ballot candidates, as the board members who vote in the union's policies refer to themselves, recognize the years and decades of damage these policies have caused, an acknowledgement that schools cannot raise children, that the only things we should be putting in front of or telling children are things that increase their knowledge, lead to self-sufficient adults, and increase their ability to pursue college, a career, or a skilled trade. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowen. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward? Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. I'd like to speak for a few moments about our budget. My name is Bree Calkins, and I'm a tired teacher with WCPS. I'm tired of people who have no idea about the needs in the field of education making decisions about our purse strings. I'm tired of them affording no funding or cutting our budget so that you are faced with cutting spending in essential areas. Essential areas like mental health services and safety and security, which, to be honest, are areas that are seeing crisis in our current climate. I'm tired of hearing about the budget surplus in the state of Maryland, and I'm tired of watching as our town turns into one big warehouse, knowing full well that there's tax revenue pouring in from those facilities. It's exhausting to see my property taxes increase, knowing full well that not a single cent is going towards our school district. It has become readily apparent that the individuals who are making decisions on our funding have no idea about the struggles that we face. Frankly, our admins deserve better, our ESPs deserve better, our guidance counselors deserve better, our teachers deserve better, and most importantly, our children deserve better. So I'm here this evening to do what teachers do. I'm here to ask, what can I do to help? How can we, your staff and faculty, help you? What is our plan to put some feet to the fire and get the funding that we need? Instead of taking what we're doled out with a, "Oh, thank you, sir," how are we going to push back? Because at the end of the day, I'm tired. I'm tired of knowing that by the end of the year, many of our talented teachers are going to leave us. I'm tired of the daily worry if my babies are going to get to the safety of my classroom, or are they going to get caught up somewhere because of a fight. I'm tired of trying to make it through a fast-paced curricula that gets interrupted all the time because we're placed on hold and lockdown because of safety issues and fights. I'm tired of losing sleep at night, wondering if my kids are getting the mental health services that they actually need. We need a change. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward? Good evening. Just put Carol Mallon on it. You'll know. Thank you.
Well, I'm so glad I came tonight. I almost did not, but I am very, very glad to be here. As you know, I'm Carol Mallon, and I am the president of the Washington County Teachers Association. And I'm here tonight to provide public comments on behalf of our 1,400 members. First, the FY 2025 draft general fund budget. I am concerned that in the rhetoric of politicians and others, false choices and incomplete information will dominate your deliberations regarding what funding to seek from the Washington County Commissioners in response to the reduction in anticipated state revenue this year. For example, if the Commissioners would provide the Board of Education with additional revenue beyond Dr. Sovine's initial FY 2025 request, you would not need to cut the much-needed additional transportation router position or eliminate some teaching positions from county schools to move them to other schools with higher needs. We know that the resources to do this already exist in Washington County. Washington County government officials have reported record surpluses in revenue in recent years and have made decisions that have not prioritized funding for K-12 education. The needed funding could be allocated without raising taxes or taking from another county agency if the political will is there. WCTA members call on our elected officials to prioritize and serve our children ahead of the desire to convince people that our resources are scarce. If Washington County's elected leaders work together, we can overcome our challenges. WCTA will continue to advocate for full and adequate funding for public education, and we hope that you will not let false choices convince you to advocate for less than what we need. Yesterday, I traveled down to Annapolis with a group of Maryland State Education Association members from across the western Maryland counties to advocate for legislative priorities that are important to us as the local education associations. Several other WCTA members also attended. We extend this public thank you to Delegate Grossman for meeting with us and sharing information regarding education-related bills in the House. I've prepared a packet of materials for you to review that highlight MSEA's priorities, including the expansion of Grow Your Own programs to improve the educator pipeline, the expansion of educator licensure requirements to address the teacher shortage, the Freedom to Read Act to protect honest and accurate education for students, and to establish standards for libraries to assure fair criteria are applied and enforced in maintaining library collections, as well as legislation to address issues of inequities across job categories in the Blueprints Career Ladder legislation and the Responsible Contracting in Our Public Schools Act. WCTA also supports several of your priorities, including HB 971, SB 851, Interscholastic Athletics, Student Eligibility Waiver and School Classification, HB 386, SB 425, Maryland Meals for Achievement in-Class Breakfast Program alterations, and the HB 696, SB 579, Breakfast and Lunch Programs universal expansions. I've also included a copy of the testimony that I provided in support of House Bill 995 to require residency for members of the Washington County Board of Education. It is common sense to require that individuals who serve on this elected Board of Education be residents of Washington County for at least 6 months and a resident of the state for at least 12 months preceding the date that the member takes office. It is also common sense that a member of the board must maintain their primary residence in Washington County during their term. This promises to be an interesting spring in Washington County, and it is my sincere hope that the citizens of Washington County are paying close attention. We do not need grandstanding, fear-mongering, incomplete information, and false choices. We need honesty. WCTA will assist in whatever ways we can to support the conversation in an accurate and professional manner. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mrs. Mallon. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward at this time? James Davis was the first person who had signed up. Did Mr. Davis by any chance come in? Okay. Thank you all who've come forward to speak this evening. At this time, we'll have board member response to public comment. Colleagues? Okay. Seeing no comment, we'll move to our first item of old business. All of our old business this evening deals with the second reading of proposed changes to policy. And we have with us Mrs. Ram. And our first action item under consideration is the second reading of proposed changes to policy GBEE, employee use of social media.
Thank you, President Williams, Dr. Sabine, members of the board. The Board of Education approved the first reading of proposed changes to policy GBEE at its public business meeting on January 16, 2024. The policy committee sought public comment on the proposed changes by placing a notice on board docs and the WCPS website. The committee discussed a comment received at its public work session on February 1st, 2024, but did not recommend any further changes to the policy. The committee is now recommending the Board of Education approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy GBEE.
Thank you, Mrs. Ram. Is there a motion, please?
Madam President, I move to approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy GBEE entitled Employee Use of Social Media.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Any questions, any discussion? Mrs. Ram, I have a question that was posed to me, and I'm going to do the best I can to read that question so that we can get some clarification. A teacher or a WCPS employee would be able to put on his or her personal social media page a reposting of an official WCPS post that congratulated or offered good wishes or good luck before a competition to a student and name that student in the post. However, an individual, an employee or a teacher, other employee of WCPS, could not post on his or her social media page a note of good wishes or congratulations naming a student, just an outright original post of his or her own. Can you tell me, explain that, why that is for those listening and watching?
I can provide some clarification. Anytime WCPS, or any organization for that matter, posts something publicly on social media, whether it be any of the social media outlets, certainly you can share that. You're sharing public information. The next part of that is twofold answer. If I am acting in my capacity as a WCPS employee, I'm holding myself out as a WCPS employee, I have a student in my class who's received an award but has not been shared publicly, I cannot single out that student because you may not have permission and it's your personal social media page, much like we don't post pictures of a classroom on a personal social media page. Now, if there's a WCPS post that congratulates a student, and I on my personal page maybe don't share that, but congratulate that student because it was received on a public post, that's different. As I explained during the first read, we have to be careful of students' privacy. A teacher is not always privy or aware to whether parents are allowing the public dissemination of information to their students. Some parents want to keep that private. Also, a teacher's or a WCPS's employee's Facebook page may have a broader audience that the parent or guardian of that student is not appreciative of. So it really comes down to that permission, and it's always in the best interest of an employee to keep their personal Facebook page personal and separate from their professional.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Colleagues, any other questions or discussion? All right, then we'll move to the vote. We're voting to approve proposed changes to policy GBEE, employee use of social media. All those in favor? Right, we have a unanimous vote. Motion carries, and the student member concurs. Our next item under consideration is the second reading of proposed changes to policy ACE, service animals in schools. Is there a motion, please?
Madam President, I move to approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy ACE entitled Service Animals in Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Any discussion, any questions?
Well, I learned one thing on the policy committee about this. We can have miniature horses as service animals?
That is correct if they are a properly trained and certified service animal.
Found that very strange.
I had to look that one up too, to see if it was true or not.
I've never known anyone to have a miniature horse as a service animal.
I do know there's people that have them around Hagerstown, but I don't know if they're trained, but.
No further questions, no further discussion. We'll move to the vote. We're voting to approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy ACE entitled Service Animals in Schools. All those in favor? All right, we have a unanimous vote, and the student member concurs. Okay. Next action item is the second reading of proposed changes to policy BCBD, Secretary, Treasurer / Superintendent, and the first reading to rescind policy BCBE, Assistant Secretary / Treasurer. Is there a motion, please?
Madam President, I move to approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy BCBD entitled Secretary and Treasurer / Superintendent, and the second reading to rescind policies BCBE entitled Assistant Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Any questions, any discussion? We'll move to the vote. We're voting to approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy BCBD and the second reading to rescind policy BCBE. All those in favor? All right, we have a unanimous vote, and the student member concurs. And our final action item under our old business is the second reading of proposed changes to policy EEA, pupil transportation. Is there a motion, please?
Madam President, I move to approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy EEA entitled Pupil Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Any questions, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of approval of the second reading of proposed changes to policy EEA entitled Pupil Transportation, please raise your hand. Okay, we have a unanimous vote, and the student member concurs. Thank you, Mrs. Ram. And under new business, we have several first readings of policy. So we'll begin first with the first reading of proposed changes to policy EFGH, surveillance cameras. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy EFGH entitled Surveillance Cameras.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Any questions, any discussion? Okay, we'll move to the vote. We're voting to approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy EFGH entitled Surveillance Cameras. All those in favor? Okay, we have a unanimous vote, and the student member concurs. The next action item is the first reading of proposed changes to policy BCBB, officers, hard for me to get that word out, officers of the Board of Education. Is there a motion, please?
Madam President, I move to approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy BCBB entitled Officers of the Board of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there a second? Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Any questions, any discussion?
I have a question. Why was organizations inserted into 3C?
We tried to capture all the different or various entities or groups or, lack of a better word, organizations that when the president responds to communications on behalf of the Board of Education.
Trying to remember the discussion at the committee meeting, and I think it was just to be inclusive.
We looked at the board norms and communication processes as well to make certain we captured all of the different categories, but I can make note of that.
Is there an example that you could provide us with an organization that's?
Off the top of my head, President Williams, can you think of one that we were referencing? Organizations was referenced in the board norms and communication processes. I don't believe in policy committee we specifically mentioned any organizations. We just captured the categories off of the, as I said, the norms.
So would an organization then be like the Rotary Club, if you wanted to go speak at the Rotary Club or something like that?
If you're speaking on behalf of the Board of Education, certainly if you're speaking in your individual capacity or as a member of that club or some other entity, now I can't stop using the word organization, some other entity, I would say no.
Because I'm just thinking, if this is addressed in our board norms, now that it's been brought up, because I think I was even part of this discussion, I don't remember it even coming up. If it's part of the board norms, should it stay there and not be in here?
I mean, this is talking specifically to in deliberations with other entities. So I don't know that that's necessarily the same. We can have a further conversation in policy committee, and I can make note of those concerns.
I'm just, I don't know why it would ever be an issue, but I'm just thinking if it's in there and we don't know why it's in there, then maybe it doesn't need to be in there too.
No, is there a specific concern about organizations?
Not at all. I'm like I said, I'm just, if we don't know why it's in there, that's all I'm saying. And again, you're right, we can discuss this in policy committee, but I just wanted to make that be, just because I'll forget to bring it up in policy, so.
Make a note. You have a pen in your hand. Make a
Well,
note.
this is just first reading, so we can make changes before second reading, right?
That's correct. And if they're not significant or substantial changes, we could still proceed to second read with making any minor changes and the removal of one word. Given the context of the policy as a whole, I don't think constitutes a major or substantial change.
I'd be in favor of removing that word and moving on from that.
There has to be something in our notes of why that was.
Okay.
Can we just let it go to second read?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay. So,
Could MABE be counted as an organization, the Maryland Association of Boards of Education?
Yes.
would be an example. That would be one.
Or is that an agency?
That's an organization.
That's an
An
organization.
association.
The state,
organization.
the state board would be an agency, but the Maryland Association of, that would be an organization.
So that'd be an
Then
association.
the president does, when we meet jointly with the Board of County Commissioners to present budgets, our budget, once we adopt it, the president does speak to open for the Board of Education. So that would be an agency when we go before another agency, if you want to consider the county commissioners an agency.
Well, we do have agencies there.
Yeah, I know. Well, we can bring this back, and we can discuss this as
Discuss it. in
policy
committee
and bring it back for second reading. It can be changed.
I've made a few notes of the discussion, and we can discuss it at policy.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, let's move then to the vote. We're voting to approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy BCBB entitled Officers of the Board of Education. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? Okay, so we have 6 affirmative, 1 in opposition, and the student member concurs with the affirmative, so the motion carries. Thank you. Next is first reading to rescind policy BDDK, reporting of Board of Education meeting business. Is there a motion, please?
Madam President, I move to approve the first reading to rescind policy BDDK entitled Reporting Board of Education Meeting Business.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there any discussion? Yes.
Listeners well to have Mrs. Ram explain why we're rescinding this, because just as a title, the rescission of a policy regarding the reporting of board meeting business may not appear exactly friendly as a Board of Education. So.
And I can certainly appreciate that. The recommendation to rescind this specific policy is because in reviewing the policy, every item contained in the policy is covered in another policy already, and we've reviewed those policies recently. So in my experience, when you have duplicative policies, they can end up in conflict, and that's not in the best interest of the Board of Education. So the recommendation to rescind this policy is because it is covered in 4 other policies.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Discussion? Right, then we'll move to the vote. We're voting to approve the first reading to rescind policy BDDK entitled Reporting Board of Education Meeting Business. All those in favor? Okay, we have a unanimous vote. And the student member concurs. Next, we have the first reading of proposed changes to policy FEB, Professional Architectural and Engineering Services. Is there a motion, please?
Madam President, I move to approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy FEB entitled Professional Architectural and Engineering Services.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Any discussion, any questions? Okay, then we'll move to the vote. All those in favor? Okay, we have a unanimous vote, and the student member concurs. Thank you, Mrs. Ram. Okay, our next item under new business is the approval of this evening's consent agenda. We have Mr. Scott Bakewell, Supervisor of Purchasing, with us. Good evening, Mr. Bakewell.
Good evening, President Williams, members of the board, Dr. Sovine. Tonight I have 12 items for your review. These items were reviewed by our Purchasing Review Committee and are being recommended for approval, and staff is available if you have any additional questions.
Thank you. Is there a motion, please?
Madam President, I move to approve the awards, renewals, and procurements for strategic planning consultant to Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Publishing Company at an approximate cost of $110,200. Unit price contract for tree trimming and removal renewal to Antietam Tree Service, Carbaugh Tree Service, and Potomac Grounds Care at the unit prices listed. Whiteboards renewal to Everwhite Corporation at the unit prices listed. Selected kitchen upgrades at North Hagerstown High School to GRC General Contractor, Inc. at a cost of $792,067. Selected kitchen upgrades at Smithsburg High School to GRC General Contractor, Inc. at a cost of $225,472. Server hardware to Computer Design and Integration at a cost of $384,222.02. Janitorial and food service supplies and equipment extension to Wise Brothers at the unit prices. Design build Smithsburg High School gym floor replacement to Miller Flooring Company at a cost of $148,250. Aircraft build program and STEM curriculum to Tango Flight Inc. at a 2-year total cost of $136,208. English Language Arts Middle School and High School core resource to Amplify Education Inc. at a cost of $528,787.10, and McGraw-Hill Education Inc. at a cost of $351,244.31. School bus and vehicle tires to Donald B. Rice Tire Company, Inc. at the unit prices listed. And processed commodities to the vendors listed in the exhibit at the unit prices listed.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Questions for Mr. Bakewell?
I have a
Any
question.
discussion? Yes,
Have-
Dr. Zentmeyer.
Have we ever had a strategic planning consultant before?
Not in my time here. I don't know if there was anything prior to my starting, but if we have, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Any questions?
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Stan.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You were first.
Just one quick question. The Smithsburg High School gym floor, it's got to be 60 years old, close to it, I guess.
Yeah, that's original floor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in this Tango agreement. So it's going to be built out in the Air Museum, if I read the MOU correctly.
I believe the majority of the build is actually going to take place at Williamsport High School, with the finish taking place out at the airport when you apply the wings.
Okay, so where's it going to be? I mean, what space is available? How big is this airplane going to be? I just want to know, ask these questions, because I want to make sure I understand what we're doing.
We're not in the 747 business.
Oh, I understand that.
However, most of the plane itself will be built at Williamsport High School, and Mr. Prue is spot on. The final build will happen at the Hagerstown Airport. The build actually comes in separate compartments, kits, if you will. Right. And then you put the final components together at the Hagerstown Airport. There's a shop area that's been identified at Williamsport High School where we're actually going to be able to do most of the build.
So the wings will be put on out at the airport?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out, where some of these things are going to be done. And the other thing is there, if they're going to be doing these things, students and so forth, what liability is there for the school board, for the Board of Education, when they're doing something that's relatively dangerous, like perhaps you're going to have a crane or something to lift those wings into place and all that? What's the liability?
No, this is actually a smaller plane. It's actually a much smaller plane that doesn't require the use of a heavy lift.
Okay.
It's a two-seat plane. And I think we might have even put the exact model plane in there. Let's see, I think I have it in front of me. It is a RV-12IS airplane.
But I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, so we showed I think a picture of it at CNI. It is a smaller plane, and that's by design again, so that it doesn't require the use of heavy tools to put things in as a lift. The plane itself is actually owned the entire time by Tango.
Right.
They're responsible for working with the FFA and certifications. And then, of course, we have our fearless leader that's willing to volunteer to take it up and fly it for us. So I think we'll be in good hands there.
747 might be better for mechanic school.
I tried to talk Dr. Zentmeyer into taking me up.
Dr. Willie, you wouldn't have an ulterior motive in having a superintendent
Not at all.
take the first testimony.
Not at all.
That's what I'm asking.
Mr. Evans, you have a question?
Yeah, a couple of them. For number 10, the ELA resource, what are we currently using that is going to be replaced?
The current product is Collections. It was purchased in 2018 for a 6-year contract. It's up for renewal.
Okay, so this is just
Replacing that, yes.
Is there an extra cost in that?
So the Collections resource, I think we had this shared. There were 2 different purchases made in 2018. It was a total of about $1 million. And that's 2018 prices, so I think we're pretty comparable. The only difference I would note on this is that we're using grant funds to pay for this upfront.
Right. And then number 6, the Education Enterprise Consortium, when does that go into effect?
Which one?
The number 6, the hardware contract, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Hardware contract for the server hardware.
What do you mean by go into effect?
When is that contract effective? When are we?
So we're just purchasing, so it
Okay.
can be done via purchase order to the vendor.
So you're just asking us for permission to go and get the contract?
Right,
and
so,
everything.
the MEEC is a joint purchasing organization where they have floated already the bid, they already have bid pricing for this particular product, for the servers. They do a lot of technology level pricing. It's similar to, we often use Sourcewell or Omnia Partners, and so off the pricing that's available under that contract that's noted, we'll be able to buy the server hardware at the price indicated.
Okay. And then I do want to go back to number one, that strategic planning consultant. I don't know, I don't think I like the idea of an outside entity coming in to help us create our strategies. I think that's something that I would much rather trust you guys with. What was the reasoning behind going for the consultant there?
President Williams, if I may.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is quite common practice anytime you do something as significant as a strategic plan to have superintendent certainly and the leadership team and stakeholders representing Washington County to be engaged. But it is common practice to have a third party that is strong in strategic planning and to engage with the superintendent and team members to make sure that the strategic plan, which serves as a North Star for 5 years, that we are stretching appropriately, and it is aligned with the community's desires, but at the same time, it is grounded in best practice. So having the superintendent, along with the leadership team and stakeholders such as teachers and parents, to be partnered with a facilitator that works with some of the highest performing districts in the nation to help us make sure that this strategic plan is grounded in best practice and will allow us to achieve at very high levels throughout our district, and certainly represent, help us to represent Washington County as a high-performing district, not only in Maryland but nationally. I know having a third party come in and to share perspective and to engage and take feedback and engage in focus groups, it's very healthy for us to see and get perspective in terms of what we're doing well that can be validated, that we want to continue to replicate, and perhaps some areas where we can grow. And sometimes we hear that from our external communities, internal communities, but also having that third-party lens that comes in and shares perspective of those things that we're doing well, and then certainly things that we could potentially explore growing in targeted areas is a very healthy practice.
I struggle to see, and I do appreciate that. All that makes perfect sense. I kind of expected that to be the answer, because that does make sense. But man, for $110,000, I don't see where that comes in. I also noticed that there's another group there that came in about $30,000 less. What was it about them? I think it said the technical score wasn't quite as good. What was that what did you see there?
I could probably take an opportunity to talk a little bit about the team and the scoring. I led, with Mr. Baker's help from procurement, I led the team that evaluated all the proposals, the 9 different proposals we received. We looked at all of the written narrative proposals from each of the companies, assessed them on several criteria, sort of the summary of their work, their compliance with our requirements, their company profile, demonstration of prior work that they've done with other districts, any unique qualifications they had, and then ultimately a finalist interview as well. After the initial scoring, we looked at, once we have vetted and looked at the scoring, we chose to interview the 2 top firms, and actually these were the 2 firms that scored more than an 80% on the overall scoring at that juncture. what we found in the firm that we've presented to you is a firm that has much more experience and at a high level in school systems and doing this kind of work and in leading school systems, as opposed to the other firm that actually, truthfully, the presentation, the interview was just not at the same level. Their team that visited with us lacked some of the leadership skill at a higher level within a school system that we felt was necessary if you were pulling a strategic plan together. There's parts of it that are political. There's parts of it that are managing, let's say, the will of staff, senior staff, the superintendent, the will of the board, the will of our community, the will of our business community, what our parents want, what our teachers want. And if you've not worked in that realm on a regular basis, it's a different animal to tame. And so we really felt that the firm that we're presenting to you was in the best position. They had the strongest technical proposal, the strongest interview. And I recognize that it's 25% more to go with that company, but I think we're going to get what we pay for when it comes to strategic plan, and this would be the firm that the committee unanimously felt was the best seated to assist Washington County in this program.
Thank you, Mr. Pruitt. And I would like to, Mr. Evans, to expand a little bit to your question regarding third party. And perhaps the best example that I can share, because I've done it both ways. I've done it as a superintendent just internally, and I've done it with a third party. The benefit of having a high-performing third party is when they do the focus groups with, focus sessions rather, with our internal stakeholders, whether it's parents or teachers or other staff members. If that's being led by the superintendent and staff, there's an increased likelihood that the feedback may be what they want the superintendent or staff to hear. Whereas when it's being led by a third-party facilitator, they can dig a little bit deeper, and it allows you to kind of expand. And as I've referenced before, we want to be bold with our strategic plan. It certainly needs to be grounded in the Maryland blueprint, but those things that we know that we're doing well, it's nice to receive that validation from an external source and to hear that working with the focus groups. But also we want to have a level of comfort where our key stakeholders, when they provide feedback and when a third party comes in and they dig a little bit deeper in terms of maybe the growth areas, and then they can work with a superintendent and a strategic plan team to help us refine and identify some of those key areas that may take us out of our comfort zone. And I think that is key for moving our organization forward. From my experiences, if you go with just internal staff, you kind of do what you've always done, and you really miss that opportunity to stretch the organization.
Dr. Sabine, I trust you implicitly with taming this animal at $110,000 price tag in a very lean year. I have to say, I don't want to get rid of 2 to 12 because of number one. If we had been funded completely, and I knew we were going to be, it would be a whole different story. And everything that you said had such good sense to it, but not this year.
I had some questions about item number one, which is the consultant as well. And to Dr. Zetmeyer's question, we've never had a strategic plan, so we've never had the need to have a strategic plan consultant. And for the 11 and a half years that I've been on the board, I've always questioned why we didn't have one. So thank you, Dr. Sabine, for your leadership and vision and recognizing that we do have this need for a strategic plan. My question is about the evaluation process that was applied to the vendors, and you've talked a little bit about that. I'd like to know who it was that reviewed the bids, and we have a chart. You mentioned Mr. Evans mentioned the total cost. That was the price score was a factor in awarding points. as was something called technical score. So I'd like to know what the criteria was that made up, and you read a little bit there, and if you could just repeat that, please, and talk about the process, who was involved in making the decision that.
Yep. So typically in our review process, we don't publicly name the names of the evaluators, but I can share that we had members of senior staff, central office administrators, as well as school principals on the evaluation team. The evaluation criteria, specifically from the RFP, we looked at their overall summary of how they would plan the process for WCPS. Compliance, of course, is a minor section really in talking about required background checks, WCPS insurance requirements, et cetera. The company profile. What's the makeup of the company? What's their leadership? Who are the folks that are working on the work? What are their bios? Demonstrations of the prior work. So how were they able to really illustrate for us through prior work they've done how they were going to perform the work for WCPS? And that also really shows, gets into their references as well as who are the types of systems that they've been working with that we can provide feedback from. Unique qualifications would be anything unique about that particular business in terms of the work that they do that would be considered and considered special for our process. And then adjustments to the overall technical school after we interviewed as well to lay over the in-person interview on top of that entire process. For the scoring on the pricing, we use a standard format along all of our RFPs where whatever the value of the scoring, in this case it was 30 points, the low bidder receives the full value of the 30 points. Every other bidder receives a score based on the percentage difference they are from the low bid. So in this case, and I think I don't know if I got it in mind.
I think it was 110 and 84,000 were the two.
Right, so you had a pricing score of 30 for focus schools, and you had a score of 22.868 for HMH, and that represents that really that's the percentage difference that they were from the low comparatively. So they received that same percentage of score for the points for pricing, if that makes sense.
It does.
And that's a standard process we run with all. And the reason we only opened 2 prices, so as the RFPs came in, we received all 9 RFPs. All those RFPs in a separate envelope had their pricing. We only opened the pricing for the firms that we were shortlisting for the interview. So that you don't get, from an ethics perspective, you don't get, well, should I revise that? That person can do the job for $30,000. Should I revise their scoring to bring them up because, man, they can do it for cheap. So we really we make the determinant of who are we interviewing first, and then we open the pricing, and then conduct the final interview, if that makes sense.
It does, thank you. And the payment of this $110,200 would come from what category, what line item? And it's this year's current general fund budget, correct?
It is. It is FY24's general fund budget, and this would be funded out of indirect cost recovery funds that the Board of Education has related to our expenditure of our COVID-19 relief grants.
Okay. Thank you.
President Williams?
Yes, sir.
If I may, just for the benefit of the board and the public, recognizing the significance of this work and appreciate the debate and discussion and the questions of this board, because it is critical work. I equate this to really setting the standard for Washington County, a standard of excellence, making sure that we put a process in place that will be very transparent. And through partnering with a thought partner as highly respected as HMH, they partner with some of the highest performing districts across the nation. And they are very skilled working with teams and stakeholders to target high impact areas that will allow us to hold ourselves accountable in terms of student performance and achievement, retaining teachers, all the measures that are critical to a highly effective school district. And having an expert thought partner that has deep background in doing this in multiple settings just ensures that we're getting it right. And what will be modeled in this process over the next 3 months will be continued by this team on a quarterly basis. We will identify targeted areas within that strategic plan, and we'll report out those areas where we're making significant progress, as well as there will be some areas where maybe we're not hitting that intended mark, and we need to speak to some of the adjustments that are being made to achieve those targets. But having a third party certainly allows you to go a little bit deeper and to be more efficient, and in terms of taking more calculated, bold risk. I equate it to if anytime we invest in building a new facility, it's important that we have an architect and a firm that will come together, that will partner with our team, and we'll certainly share perspective in terms of what's valued in Washington County, but we'll also listen to the experts that are external to us that may have resources that we're not familiar with, that we could benefit from. And that's the strength of having such a highly regarded thought partner as HMH that has a proven track record for engaging school communities and listening to our internal and external stakeholders and truly partnering with the superintendent and our strategic plan team to make sure that we get this right. And this is, from what we can gather, the first time that Washington County is engaged in a district-wide strategic plan. And I think it's important that in this first opportunity that we get it right.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just really worry that we're already right at the bare minimum in our general fund as far as what our policy says, and I don't remember exactly off the top of my head what those numbers are, but I know we don't have much more than what the minimum number is for that. And to go and add a new spending item to that right before we're gonna go and have our new budget come in place that we're expecting a slim number on, I worry that this is spending too soon. I think I can get on board with this, but I can't be on board with spending this when we're expecting a low budget for next year. I think the timing of this just isn't right for me.
I'm not understanding what you're saying. When there's a category currently in our general fund budget for this year. What are you saying is low?
There's, in the general fund, there is and we've discussed
I
this
think you're
in the
talking
past.
about the fund balance, not the
Right.
general
The
fund.
fund balance,
That's
yeah, sorry.
something entirely different.
But this is coming from that, is it not?
It's coming from the general fund budget.
Was it
This money
budgeted
has
for?
been budgeted for
Was-
a particular category, and my understanding is this will come out of that category, correct?
I don't remember seeing this in our 2023-24
So-
budget when it was proposed to
Right,
us.
so clarification. So as we are spending the COVID relief grants, we recoup money that's known as indirect cost recovery. It's a certain percentage points that's allowed to be charged against all federal grants. That money is coming into the general fund as revenue and unbudgeted revenue. So staff is proposing to fund this expense from that unbudgeted revenue account. It's not something, for clarity, it was not in your budget. It was not a program that was budgeted as you approved the FY24 general fund budget, but you have an opportunity to use additional revenues we're receiving as we spend down the COVID relief grants. You've got significant money there that you can use that more than can afford to pay for the cost of this consultant, if that's helpful.
And that's separate and apart from the fund balance that
That's
he's
correct. Right, the
referencing.
revenue and indirect cost recovery comes into the general fund operating budget, the general fund,
As
as
revenue.
revenue. Correct.
But this money could be dropped into that to bolster our
It could.
reserves according to what our policy says.
Correct.
And what I'm trying to say is that because we're so low on those reserves, that I think that would be a better use of this in a time where we're not expecting to have a very robust budget. So that's all I'm trying to say. I just think that the timing of this isn't quite there, and I think maybe this is something that should be put off for the time being.
Is there anyone else who?
I just have just a real quick
Yes,
question.
sure.
I just have a quick question concerning the tree trimming and removal. Is that something that we typically see a lot of?
It's more storm-related, Mr. Gesford. So let's say we had a high windstorm, we had a significant number of limbs down, multiple locations. We might call in a service to do a repair. If we had let's say a tall tree, something near a school, we might want assistance with. Since we started the grounds crew a little over a year ago, they're doing some of the, excuse the pun, the low-hanging fruit, and doing the things that they can do. But if we had significant storm damage, this is a bid we would want to go to and utilize.
I just noticed that the pricing is a lot lower on some other bid other than the emergency stuff. Was there a reason for us picking someone who was a little higher?
We award, and I'd have to look at the bid tab, but this is one of those where we would award all vendors and all lines, so that you have the flexibility. If you had a project, let's say we had a project, let's say we were coming out here right along Downsville Pike, we wanted to thin some trees, and it was more than, let's say, we wanted our staff to do. We would reach out to the firms, bring them on, show them what we wanted to take down, ask them each to quote. The prices you're seeing are the maximum they can quote for that particular service. They can go less. So if they need work right now, they could come in and they could price it less to be more competitive.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that would be a scheduled work as opposed to an emergency, let's say, from a storm.
Okay,
That's how we handled all, I hate to use the word all, but most of our unit price contracts. I mean, we set those up to make them competitive as the projects are identified.
Gotcha, understand that.
Any other questions?
I'm just wondering, Dr. Zetmeyer, and I don't know the proper procedure for this, should I amend my motion to remove number 1? We can vote for that separately and vote for the rest of the consent agenda?
I would be for the rest of it if you did that.
I think that would have been done at the beginning when we approved the agenda, but I don't know. That's the question for a parliamentarian.
Attorney Ram?
We already have a motion and a second. That would require,
Withdraw the motion.
Well, you certainly, somebody could make a motion to amend the agenda. You'd have to vote on that. If passed, then you'd have to vote on what that amendment is, which would be removing an item from the consent agenda. But then the question is, you want to vote on it standalone because it's part of a consent agenda. We don't typically have 2 consent agendas.
I mean, the other option is you explained your vote.
Thank you.
I felt bad that you
Thank you, Peter.
said you
I
didn't want
appreciate
to.
that.
Quite frankly, I would vote for the others if
I have a
if that
question.
was not on there.
I don't know if I'm out of order right now or not, but I was just sitting here thinking, I'm for, I don't have a problem with paying the money. My question is, though, with the blueprint up in the air like it is, so many aspects of it and so forth, I'm just wondering if this is a good time to start work on a strategic plan, not if there would be things in there that would come to contradict with the blueprint at some point down the road, since that is a 10-year plan. I'm just asking. I don't know.
I think it's important to recognize that a strategic plan is just that. It provides a guiding compass, but it is a fluid document. There will be changes to the blueprint multiple years out, just like with the strategic plan. As we move through on a quarterly basis, while there will be constants, there will be some items that will change. But to the point, Mr. Stauffer, that you make in terms of the blueprint, there's consistency there with the 5 pillars. While some of those items and strategies may adjust, I believe the consistency of the 5 pillars will remain the same, and certainly that will be the primary basis of the strategic planning process. But from my standpoint, the fact that I'm sitting here in the second year of my term, I've never been in a district where we did not have an up-to-date strategic plan. I believe this is a high-performing district that has the ability to perform at higher levels and compete with some of the highest performing districts, not only in Maryland but in the nation. And I think the only way you get there is that you develop a strategic plan. A recommendation would be with a strong third-party thought partner like HMH, which is the recommendation, so that we can hit the mark now and target key areas that we can track and measure our success and make adjustments over the next 5 years so that we can achieve in all aspects of our organization. That's the beauty of a strategic plan. It allows you to go through a very intentional process where you can identify your areas of strength, areas that you want to target of growth, and it allows you to improve as an organization. To me, delaying a strategic planning process would put us at a disadvantage. It is true that the blueprint does provide us a primary guide, but I believe we need to embark in a strategic plan that embraces the blueprint, but also stretches this district in areas that position us to compete with the very best districts in the nation. And while we are excelling in the apprenticeship program, while we're excelling with our EL and the science of reading, the beauty of a strategic plan, it allows you to solidify and target areas of high impact that will allow us to very transparently demonstrate to our public how we are committed to continuous improvement.
What's the projected timeline for developing a strategic plan generally? You've been through it.
Generally, it takes anywhere from 3 to 4 months. It can be done in 3 months, but the goal would be, upon action of the board, immediately begin in March, April, May, and looking to provide some closure in June. But to do a very meaningful strategic planning process, you have to have a strategic planning core group and then focus groups. So there needs to be time for public engagement and to reflect on the work, and then allow our third-party facilitators to provide some details, to bring it back to the superintendent and leadership team, and we refine it to make it ours. And that is best done over multiple months. So it is a very intentional, labor-intensive process. But once again, this work is very important because it creates your guiding map for the next 5 years.
One last question. This has nothing to do with the FY25 budget. It's all FY24, right?
Correct.
Any other comments? Questions? We're ready to move to the vote? Okay. The motion and second is on the approval of the awards, renewals, and procurements as presented, as read by Mr. Bickford. All those in favor? 2, 3, 4. Opposed? 3. And the student member concurs with the affirmative, and the motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Okay, our next agenda item is an emergency procurement for the board's ratification. Mr. Bechtel?
Yeah, again, tonight I'm requesting ratification of the emergency procurement for the installation of a replacement elevator at Williamsport High School. And staff is available if you have any additional questions for that.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to ratify the emergency procurement for the installation of a replacement elevator at Williamsport High School at a cost of $155,877.50.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Any questions?
I have a question quick.
Yes.
How old's the original elevator? Because it must be 30 years or more.
It's likely original to the building.
No.
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 No,
It
Mr.
was
Rollins
put
is behind
in,
me. 1990, so 33.
1990? I was going to say it was in the 90s sometime, because I could see the tower for it being built from my room by Callis Contractors, so. This has been out of service for quite some time, though. What delay in getting the parts and stuff? I mean,
We've tried at really great length to get parts, to get repaired. We've had several firms looking at it, and ultimately, we need a rebuild of the guts of that elevator. I mean, the car is going to remain the same, but it's an entire rebuild of the guts with a new digital board to create the movement within the elevator.
so it's just not the car itself.
Correct.
We're talking about.
Everything that makes the car operate.
Right, right.
And we've juggled some classes for some students, moved them from the
Right,
lower level to the
yeah,
upper
I know you
level to meet ADA compliance at this juncture. But felt like we needed to move forward with the emergency procurement to save time, truthfully, to get this repaired over this summer. Otherwise, we risked heading into next fall and again, potential concerns with ADA compliance the longer this thing goes on.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? All right, we'll move to the vote. We're voting to ratify the emergency procurement for the installation of a replacement elevator at Williamsport High School at a cost of $155,877.50. Did I read that right, Mr. Prue?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The hour is late, and I'm not sure that I am reading numbers correctly. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, 7 is a unanimous vote, and the student member concurs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is fiscal year 2024 budget adjustments. And we have Mr. Eric Sisler, our Executive Director of Finance, along with Mr. Prue, our Chief Operating Officer.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Savine. The budget adjustments presented before you are related to the current year, the fiscal 24 general fund budget year. Mr. Sisler will kind of walk you through these adjustments, give you a high-level rundown. We reviewed these adjustments with the Finance Committee last week to seek their concurrence. And of course, with the board's agreement this evening, these would move on to the commissioners. I think we're penciled in for next week should the board approve them this evening.
Yes. As you're aware, generally, a couple times a year, we review the budget for cross-category, what the state considers cross-category budget adjustments that are needed. What we have here, there are several areas where we've seen higher costs due to things for like substitutes, higher contracted psychologist costs, and contracted speech therapists and interpreters. These are areas that we've had for basically since COVID, just due to filling vacancies and trying to cover the needs of the system. And at the same time, we've also had some areas where we've seen increased income through interest income or savings in health insurance and other fringe benefits costs associated with vacant positions that have helped us cover these other costs that have increased. And as Mr. Prue just mentioned, these adjustments were approved by the Finance Committee on Wednesday, February 7th.
So probably a couple of other highlights. You know, I think as you look at the top half of the sheet, those are areas where you've got additional revenue or cost savings. You know, you've got, you know, with interest rates being what they are, where we are actively pursuing short-term investments that have high yield, we're looking that we're going to have about $1.5 million additional in interest revenue this year, which is substantial. You see the indirect cost recovery that we just talked about under consent agenda as the line under that. And of course, the majority of those rest of those savings are really due to vacancies that we have, as Mr. Sisler mentioned. I don't think I have anything to add really on the costs at the bottom half. Those are the areas where you're seeing increased costs. In a net result, we're looking at adjusting $3.5 million throughout the budget, but still leaving the budget balanced. So there's no deficit or profit being noticed during these adjustments.
So this adjustment is different than our quarterly budget adjustments in that these are cross categories, correct? Is that what?
These are essentially the quarterlies, what we called quarterlies for years.
Yes.
We don't do them on a quarterly basis
We're
anymore. We
doing
do
them
them as sort
twice
of
a
as
year.
needed,
Okay.
2 to 3 times.
Okay.
So it is essentially the same, the cross-category. Monthly, the board receives, and the county finance office receives those transfers that are within category. We note those, we send those to you usually around the first Friday of the month, and then they move on to the county finance office as required by law.
Okay. So I have some questions, and my questions that I'm asking are, I hope, to inform and be transparent for those who are at home listening or watching, as well as for us sitting up here on the dais. When it shows that zero net effect on the fund balance, can you talk to us a little bit, please, about what the fund balance is, why we have a fund balance, how funds come to drop into the fund balance, the difference between restricted and unrestricted funds in the fund balance? Can we talk about that first? And I'm not an attorney. I don't want this to appear to be an interrogation or a cross interrogation. But I really feel that there is the need to understand what these terms are and how they affect us as board members.
So I think, probably to begin, it all begins with the board approving a balanced budget at the beginning of the year. So most, believe all, if not all, government agencies balance their budget in some way. So your planned expenditures for the year equal your planned revenues for the year, and you start there. So when we look at the budget adjustments and we look at that bottom line that says net effect on fund balance is zero, what we're saying is these adjustments are not taking money from your fund balance, but they're not putting money into your fund balance either. Your fund balance is essentially the net result, long-term, over time, of your yearly operations, your fiscal operations. So in any year when your revenues exceed your expenses, you have a positive fund balance. And that's just like you would at home. You have savings at the end of the month. You receive your paycheck, and you pay your rent, and you buy food, and your car payment, or whatever you have. And at the end of the month, if you've got $100 left, that's a fund balance of $100. That's profit, essentially, you made on the month, to put it sort of in a business term. That's essentially your fund balance, and it floats. So if on any given year, the board's revenue did not exceed expenditures, or we had unforeseen expenditures, we would dip into that fund balance, or essentially the bank, the board's savings account is probably a good way to put it, to pay those bills. And so we would, on that particular year, your account and your savings account would go down as opposed to going up. We have unassigned and restricted fund balances. So at the end of the year, if we have income that exceeds expenses and it drops into the fund balance, it drops in an unassigned way, meaning it's fallen into the account, it's fallen into the savings account, and the board can use it for any number of topics that the board would decide to take action on. You might use it for capital expenditures, you might use it for an emergency expense should you have an emergency reason to have a procurement that you don't have other funds for. And that's what you would think of for your unassigned fund balance. On your restricted fund balance, the board may take motion at some time to approve the movement of money in the unassigned fund balance into a restricted fund balance. The board has several funds in restricted fund balance currently. You have money in your public-private partnership account, which is, if memory tops me right, about $460,000 is currently in the restricted fund balance for public-private partnerships. And we still have a little bit of money waiting to pay final bills on the Tech High renovation that included the build-out of the diesel program. There's still some fixes and things going on there, so we're still retaining some money in the restricted fund balance there for that project. And you may recall several years ago, I say several, it's really like 3 years ago, where we utilized the COVID relief grants we had to offset general fund expenses we had to allow ourselves to retain a larger fund balance at the end of, I believe it was fiscal 22, to fund that diesel program and the renovation that took place at Tech High. So that's a way where you used grant dollars to save general fund dollars, to drop that money into your savings account, to then restrict it and turn it over and spend it on another project. So I hope that's helpful. I think I've answered your questions, but if there's anything else missing, let me know.
No, you've answered my question. I do know that, having served on this board for 11 and a half years, I can remember years where the board has received criticism for the amount of money that was in the fund balance. Essentially, that we were padding the budget so that money could drop into the fund balance that would allow the superintendent to fund special projects. I believe that was a criticism, not in recent years, but in years past. There's good reason to have the fund balance, and I think there are guidelines and rules as to how much money we can have in the fund balance. Is that correct? It's advised that you have a certain amount of money on hand in case of an emergency. For instance, if the federal government or the state government would not be able to issue the revenues that we were expecting and we weren't able to pay our employees, it would be a good idea to have money in that fund balance to do that. But I've also been told that not necessarily, because the county government would be responsible for doing that.
So policy DFAA outlines the board's goals for its fund balance.
Right.
So the county, and in this policy, we make reference to the county's fund balance policy as well. So the county's policy retains 17% of its general fund revenue. We are a subset of the county's general fund budget. Therefore, we believe that the county is holding the fund balance for the board of the amount of money that they would provide to the Board of Education. So in our policy, we look at holding between 45 and 60 days of receipts that we would have from all other sources, state and federal, other grants and so forth. So that accounts to approximately 16.4% of what those other funds would be. Just took a quick look at the FY24 budget. Those other sources are approximately, big round numbers, about $230 million. And that would show a target then for our unassigned fund balance of $37.8 million. The board currently holds about 15.8. So about 41% of the target is what's currently in the Board of Education's fund balance, and this is the highest level the fund balance has been at in the last 30 years.
Okay. So in terms of best practices, for a Board of Education with regard to their fund balance. What would you say, Mr. Sisler? Mr. Prue?
I mean, Jeff hit on a lot of the high points that he just mentioned when the notes that I had, that it does amount to about 25 days if we would do a 365-day year and consider or assume that the county would cover us on their portion of the budget, where our policy recommends 45 to 60 days, even though this is the highest it has been in about 30 years.
30 years. And I know, as I said, we've used the fund balance. I think about this facility and the renovations to this facility. We were able to do all of that from the fund balance. I believe we also were able to pay off the BISPA loan to bring that to an end using the fund balance. Have we ever had an emergency where we needed to access funds in the fund balance?
I can't.
That you can recall?
Not that I'm aware of.
So it's always been a planned use?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That helps me a lot.
And I think, Mrs. Williams, I think to your question too of, best practice or guidance, I would argue the policy is best guidance, and we should be striving to reach that level. That being said, I think our risk is fairly low when you consider that we are funded from state and local government. That's of course our primary two services, right? We have very little outside of that. There are other entities that have fundraising abilities that have an obligation to fund their local boards of education. I think as we think back to the recession of the early 2010s, and there were counties talking about maintenance of effort and wanting to default on maintenance of effort, and I think the state was clear: if you default on maintenance of effort, we're going to redirect the funds that are due to you and give them to your Board of Education prior to you receiving them. So I think when I think about those conversations, I think we are fairly well insulated, but we never want to say never. So I think our goal should be to meet our policy, but I think we have options, and I don't think we should be overly concerned about the level of fund balance.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question and a comment. I will say that if it's in policy, if that's what our target is, we should strive to do that. Otherwise, what's the point in having it there? So that's part of the reason why I just vote no on the spending, because, again, that's money that we could have dropped into that balance there. So, but anyway, for the food services, the 30,000 there, I thought they had a, oh geez, what's the word I'm looking for? See, it is late.
They have a fund balance.
A surplus, thank you, a
They do.
surplus. I thought they had extra money they were required to spend. What do we need to move money around to them for?
I'll start, and you may be able to add some commentary. So historically, we've budgeted about $30,000 a year in their general fund budget for food service transfer. And this additional $30,000 is primarily used to write off the bad debt, the bad food service debt at the end of the year. And I believe we're not allowed to charge that to the food service fund.
It's a non-allowable expense per
I
federal
remember
code.
having that discussion before, that's right,
Yep.
thank you.
So this covers the portion that's written off towards collections to support the food service fund.
Any other questions? Okay, then we're ready to vote. We're voting to approve the proposed fiscal year 2024 budget adjustments as presented. All those in favor? We have a unanimous vote, and the student member concurs. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, our next item of new business is the board's fiscal year 2025 budget. And we have been joined at the table by Mr. Shives, our budget and financial reporting analyst. Good evening.
You don't get rid of us that easily. We're
No,
fixtures
you're
up
with
here
us
tonight.
for a while.
So thank you, Mrs. Williams. So the next item is the board's adoption of the superintendent's recommended budget as the board's draft budget for FY25. I guess is a matter of housekeeping in terms of where we go from here. With the board's adoption, staff will engage the Budget Advocacy and Review Committee to begin reviewing the budget document in preparation for their testimony to the board during the public hearing. And then at a subsequent date, I believe the hearing is for the business meeting in March. Subsequent to that, in the April business meeting, the board then will adopt the budget finally as their adopted budget at the April business meeting. And at that point, we will wait and see what the final funding outcome will be from the county commissioners, whether there's any other adjustments from the state, and then we can always revisit the budget late in May or early June.
Thank you. Is there a motion, please?
Madam President, I move to adopt the superintendent's FY 2025 recommended general fund budget as the Board of Education's FY 2025 draft general fund budget.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Questions? Any discussion? Okay, we move to the vote. We're voting to adopt the superintendent's fiscal year 2025 recommended general fund budget as our budget, fiscal year 2025 draft general fund budget. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? 2. And the student member concurs with the affirmatives. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next item of new business is to consider the authorization of investment managers for the Washington County Public Schools Investment Program. We have Mr. Frew and Mr. Sisler again.
I told you you can't get rid of us. I even tried to get rid of myself. Sorry about that. So, as we've transitioned to Mr. Sisler in the Finance Department after Mr. Brandenburg being there for nearly 30 years, we recognize that policy DFA, which outlines work on our investments and authorized investment managers, uses the wrong terminology. Titles have changed over the years. It currently calls for the Director of Accounting and the Chief Financial Officer, two titles that no longer exist within the school system. So staff is seeking the board's approval tonight to authorize Chief Operating Officer and Executive Director of Finance as the investment managers for WCPS.
Thank you. Is there a motion, please?
Madam President, move to authorize the Chief Operating Officer and the Executive Director of Finance as investment managers for WCPS.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Questions? Comments? We'll move to the vote. Voting to authorize the Chief Operating Officer and the Executive Director of Finance as investment managers for Washington County Public Schools. All those in favor? Oh, we lost Mrs. Murray, so we have 6 affirmative, and the student member concurs. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sisler. Okay, our final item of new business is the approval of a donation to the robotics programs from Volvo Group Trucks. And we have Dr. Gary Willow, our Associate Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, here to present.
Good evening, President Williams, members of the board, Dr. Savine. I have the pleasure of being here tonight asking for your approval of a $25,000 donation from Volvo Group Trucks that will support our robotics and computer science programs at the elementary, middle, and high school.
Thank you. Is there a motion, please?
President Williams, I move to approve a donation in the amount of $25,000 from Volvo Group Trucks to Washington County Public Schools Computer Science Programs.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Any questions? All right, we'll move to the vote. We're voting to approve a donation in the amount of $25,000 from Volvo Group Trucks to Washington County Public Schools Computer Science Program. All those in favor? All right, we have 7 affirmative, a unanimous vote, and the student member concurs.
Thank you. Thank you to Volvo.
To Volvo, they're very generous and very supportive of our program, computer science and robotics. Okay, as I said, that concludes our new business, and we'll go back to the superintendent's report. Dr. Savine.
Yes, thank you, President Williams and members of the board. During the budget discussions this year, I shared with the board and our community the concept of the Innovative Learning Center. This program is the merger of some of our existing WCPS programs, and staff has identified some common characteristics and synergies among them, and we believe we'll be able to meet the unique needs of our students in an effective way at a cost savings. I've asked Dr. Webster and Dr. Wilcox to join us to share more details about this change that will be in place for next year.
Thank you. Good evening, Mrs. Williams, members of the board, Dr. Savine. Dr. Wilcox and I are excited to share with you an innovation in our approach to providing personalized learning for our secondary students, which will happen under one program that we're calling the Innovative Learning Center. And it will be run out of our current Antietam building at 40 West Oak Drive here in Hagerstown. As you know, WCPS has historically been very creative in developing programming for secondary students that allows them to access their education in a variety of ways. In the Innovative Learning Center, we're combining a variety of existing programming under one roof. Our goal is to streamline access to personalized learning experiences for our students and families, a one-stop shop for students looking to engage in their learning outside of the comprehensive middle and high schools.
You will see here we have 3 programs students can apply to at the Innovative Learning Center. We're going to share an overview of each one.
First, there is Connected, which offers a virtual program, either full-time or for individual classes that supplement the student's in-person schedule at one of our comprehensive schools. The hours of this program are during the typical school day hours, and this program is a new iteration of our existing ABLE program for students in grades 6 to 12.
The second program is Extended, which is for students in grades 9 to 12 and offers classes outside of the typical school day hours, specifically in the afternoon and evening, and these classes are both in-person and virtual. Students apply each semester depending on their needs. The Extended program can be a full-time enrollment or a supplement a student's comprehensive school day schedule. This program is a new iteration of the current evening high and twilight programs.
And the third program here is Elected, which is for students in grades 11 and 12, in person and offered during the typical school day schedule. This program is tailored to students who desire a smaller school setting than their comprehensive high schools. Students who attend the Innovative Learning Center in this program will attend classes with students who are participating in our district's alternative Level 2 behavior support program. Students in the behavioral support program receive short-term intervention and support to be able to return to their comprehensive schools with a stronger behavioral skill set.
We want to take a minute to answer some of what we think will be common questions. First, students who need access to in-person classes at the Innovative Learning Center as part of the Elected program can access a bus from their home comprehensive school. Students in the Extended program taking classes outside of the typical school day will need to provide their own transportation. Applications for the Connected virtual program for grades 6 to 12 are now open for the 2024-2025 school year. Applications for the Extended program for the first semester of the 2024-2025 school year are due by August 20th, 2024. And applications for the Elected program for the 2024-2025 school year for students in grades 11 and 12 are due by May 1st, 2024. You can find the application at the link on the screen, on our website, or by asking your school counselor.
And we have flyers that will be going out to our secondary schools for counselors to share with interested students and families. And at this time, that concludes our presentation, and we can take any questions that you may have from the board.
I have some questions, but I'll put them in an email to you. Save time. Nothing pressing.
No one else has a question? Thank you both. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I just want to extend my appreciation to our team members' leadership for thinking creatively once again, coming up with a innovative approach to addressing our student needs, but also at a cost savings. Now I'd like to continue on with my update. I'd like to take a moment to thank our schools and our staff who have supported learning initiatives around Black History Month throughout the month of February. It's important to recognize the invaluable contributions Black individuals have made to our society. As I've visited schools, I saw our students celebrating the richness and diversity of these achievements through research assignments, displays in schools, special guest speakers, and much more. So once again, I want to express my appreciation to the work that's been ongoing through the month of February, celebrating the work of those high performers and Black history achievers. Last week, I had the opportunity to participate in the School Superintendents Association National Conference on Education. The first day included a full-day meeting with the governing board, and I have the privilege of serving on the governing board, representing one of two superintendents from Maryland on this board. I've also had the pleasure of being joined by two of our colleagues, Dr. Webster and Mr. Prue, the following 2 days after the governing board meeting, and we were able to participate and gain insights in a number of areas, including safety and security strategies, recruitment and retention of staff, and implementing a district-wide strategic plan. We also participated in leadership sessions that promoted innovative approaches to enhancing district unity and strength. I was certainly grateful to share in this learning experience as a team, and we look forward to bringing back some of those learning experiences and enhancing some of the strong programs that we already have in place in Washington County Public Schools. The last item that I'd like to mention is a celebration. I'd like to extend my congratulations to Lynn Wilcox, the Library Media Specialist at Williamsport Elementary School. She was recently nominated to become the 2024 Maryland School Librarian of the Year. There are 44 nominees from 20 public school districts, so Lynn is in a distinguished class for her profession. The award honors a school librarian for exemplary service and outstanding achievement in school library media. We certainly wish her all the best as she continues through the process for this state award. We have, as I've said before, much to be proud of in Washington County Public Schools, and we look forward to perhaps having Lynn here in the future and being the representative for the state of Maryland. But we're excited for her, and we look forward to her continued success. I know we at least have one of our leadership team members back there, Dr. Wilcox, who is also very proud, and I'm sure he will enjoy celebrating this success of his wife. So congratulations. President Williams and members of the board, that concludes my update.
Thank you, Dr. Sabine. All right. At this time, we'll have Dr. Webster come forward for personnel actions. Dr. Webster.
Good evening again, Mrs. Williams, members of the board, Dr. Sabine. As discussed earlier during closed session, we have several staff changes for your review, and at this time I ask for your approval of today's personnel actions.
Thank you. Is there a motion, please?
Williams, I move to approve the personnel actions dated Tuesday, February 20th, 2024, as presented in closed session.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. All right. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve today's personnel actions as presented in closed session. All those in favor? 5 affirmative, opposed, 2 in opposition. Motion carries. Personnel actions are approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Webster. Under reports to the board, we have a legislative briefing on the 2024 Maryland legislative session. And we have Steve Edwards, our Deputy Communications Officer and Legislative Advocate, presenting. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, President Williams, Dr. Savine, members of the board. Tonight, in light of the hour, I'm going to try to be as brief as I can. That's always good communication practice. But I do want you to gain a little bit of an understanding about the work that's being done on your behalf with the Maryland General Assembly, and also share with you some of the bills that we have weighed in on with testimony, both written and oral, that will be to come. So we'll just jump right into it. First of all, just wanted to cover some key dates and remind you as to where we're at in the process. The session convened back on January 10th. So we're about 5-6 weeks into this. Up the next key date will be March 18th, which is crossover date. And for those of you who may not be familiar, either here or watching at home, that's the date by which each chamber has to send to the opposite chamber legislation that it intends to pass favorably. Adjournment scheduled for April 18th, and then once that occurs, the governor has a period of time up until May 28th on which he can either sign or veto bills. We've been very busy. It's been an active session as of Friday, and I checked these numbers this morning, and they haven't changed a whole lot, but we're about 2,700 bills have been introduced. About 400 of those, or 15%, have something to do with education. Not all of those have to do with K-12 education. Certainly higher education is the subject of some, but there's a lot of bills out there with regard to education that we're working to keep track of. How are we doing that? We have a great team here. Staff meets weekly to discuss bills. That's myself, Mrs. Ram, Ms. Brown, and Dr. Savine. We are also all participating in various video conferences with MABE, PAZAM, and other groups that also helps us to gain perspective on these bills, keep up to date on what's going on with regard to amendments that may be occurring, where they're at in the process, et cetera. And as I've said, it's been very active for us. We are proud that as a team together, we've been able to draft and submit more testimony than I understand has been done in recent years. And so we're proud of that work. And do want to just take a quick moment to thank the members of that team, because certainly their value and their historical knowledge of the Maryland General Assembly, a lot of these bills and so forth, is helpful as we assess where things are this year and moving forward. Remind the board of the key values that you adopted previously, and I'm also going to hit on your legislative program priorities, as well as the watch list items. Why I wanted to mention those and refer them back to you is these are our guideposts as we do our work, as we look at legislation that comes through and assess what to monitor, what to weigh in on in favor, present testimony in opposition, or present perhaps testimony in favor but with some suggested amendments and so forth. This is what guides us. And so we appreciate you taking the time to thoughtfully consider that and approve that earlier in the year. It does help us greatly. I'm going to transition now and highlight just a few of the bills. I'm not going to sit here and go through all 400 plus, but a few of the bills with a special emphasis on those that we have submitted testimony for. And just as a reminder, this is called for under your board policy regarding school board legislative programs, which states that the legislative response team will provide a report to the board that details any positions taken on legislative proposals. So this fulfills that obligation, and we'll continue to do that throughout the session. The first bill I know is of great interest to the board. It has to do with the residency requirement. and it is working its way through the legislative process. As you know, we shared wording that we would have liked to have seen be brought forward. The delegation, it's its prerogative to whether or not to bring that forward as presented by staff on behalf of the board. They did work with those who draft the legislation in Annapolis, shared with us that draft. It wasn't quite what we had provided to them, so we went back and forth with them a little bit. It's still not exactly what the board had proposed, but it will get us there with regard to, it will require, if approved and signed by the governor, it will require, put in place a residency requirement for those who run to seek a seat on this board, as well for those who serve on the board. Where this is right now, there is actually a bill hearing in the House tomorrow, for which we have provided written testimony. We did that because there will be no oral testimony tomorrow. It's only for the sponsor of the bill. And then on March the 6th, the hearing is scheduled on the Senate side, and we plan to testify in person there. Mr. Bickford will be joining me to go over and provide testimony there. So that's where we stand with regard to that. All signs look that will be a positive outcome, but it's legislation, and we'll just have to wait and see until it's all approved and signed off on by the governor. Next bill that I wanted to mention is one that was carried by Delegate Grossman as well as Senator Quarterman. It has to do with the waivers of eligibility requirements for students who attend schools similar to BISFA, and allowing them to participate in interscholastic athletics at their home school. We have submitted there's a hearing on the House side tomorrow on this. We've submitted written testimony in favor of this, and we'll also be submitting written testimony in favor when the Senate hearing is held on March 6th, and we will see where this bill goes. School safety and security certainly has been a priority for this board and is one of the items that's on your priority and watch list. And there are a number of bills with regard to school safety and security. I'm just going to highlight a couple. This Senate bill in particular was brought forward by Senator Quarterman and has been cross-filed in the House. And what it calls for is some incremental increases from $10 million to $20 million, the amount of funding that will be made available through the Safe Schools Fund. Perhaps most importantly, it also provides a little bit of flexibility, whereas currently the money that's in that particular fund can only be used for school resource officers. Under Senator Quarterman's proposed bill, that would also be available for use for school safety employees. So it would widen out and provide a little bit of additional flexibility and allow those funds to be used for things other than just school resource officers. We are planning to testify in person. Mr. Ganley and myself plan to go to Annapolis on both the 27th and 28th to present oral testimony in favor of these proposals. This bill I included just simply because it's a little similar, and it calls for an increase in the funding, as I mentioned, from $10 million to $20 million, but does not provide that flexibility to spend that money on something other than simply school resource officers. The reason I included this was some interesting testimony came forward when this bill went before the House committee that heard it, and that was the fact that not all of the $10 million that's currently made available through that fund is utilized. And so the question came up, why would we add additional funding when the funding that's currently available is not being fully utilized? It's a good question. And during the course of the dialogue there with this particular bill sponsor, the question arose, would you be open to flexibility in lieu of adding additional funding, knowing the fiscal challenges that the state faces? And the sponsor was open to that. So with that as a little bit of background, I think that there's a good chance that we'll see additional flexibility with regard to this money, but perhaps it's going to be a little bit more challenging to have additional money appropriated by the state. The next bill talks about a concentration of poverty school grant program, and currently school divisions that have at least 40 schools eligible for this particular program can spend up to 50% of the funds that they receive, the state funds they receive, to support those schools. This bill would expand that, and that's where it would impact Washington County. It would expand it in such a way that local systems with fewer than 40 eligible schools, and currently WCPS has 12 schools that are part of this program, this would allow them to use up to 10% of the funds that the state provides to support those schools. That's about a $900,000 impact for Washington County if this legislation is approved as it was written. So we're certainly monitoring that and have provided written testimony in favor of that particular legislation. One of the things that was on your watch list had to do with advertising, bid notifications and so forth, and expanding that beyond simple ads in the newspaper. We provided testimony in favor of this bill. It's been amended. What we were looking for, its original form was it would allow you to make those bid notifications online in ways, and you could still do it in newspapers, but in ways other than exclusively newspapers. The bill has been amended, and it in its current form, which has passed both the Senate and the House, and those bills have now crossed over respectively, it would require that we post those bid things in the newspaper and in other places, such as on our website and so forth. So kind of a partial win there if that one goes through as it's in its current state. The last two that I wanted to reference that we have weighed in on, both in support, and these were mentioned earlier during public comment, have to do with providing students with greater access to meals. We all know that when students have fewer things and fewer distractions, such as being hungry in school, they tend to do better academically, et cetera. This first one would provide some flexibility in the way that the in-classroom breakfast program is served. Currently, those breakfasts are served in the classroom, and it's required that they're served in the classroom. This bill would provide flexibility locally again, that the local board could allow for that breakfast to be served in a broadly accessible part of the school, including grab-and-go carts, and then be eaten in the classroom. Working with our school nutrition staff and trying to learn a little bit about the possible implications for them of this, they were supportive of it, could reduce the amount of staff time that's involved in distributing those meals specifically to classrooms and so forth. And so we, through the LRT, have provided some testimony in favor of that. Then the final bill that I wanted to reference this evening for you has to do with the universal expansion of the breakfast and lunch program that would allow schools that participate in the school breakfast and national school lunch program to make those meals available at no cost to all students. There would be the state would provide a reimbursement for all of those meals and so forth. And in working with our, again, our food and nutrition staff and the LRT, put in some testimony in favor of this particular legislation, which is still working its way through. I think it's been heard by both committees, but no action has been taken yet. To wrap up, we will be providing updates at your future meetings through the end of the session. As I noted earlier, the session is scheduled to end on April the 8th, so we will have presumably our final update at your meeting on the 16th, and we'll continue to provide you with that. And if there are any questions, we'll try to answer them for you.
Any questions for Mr. Edwards?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, continuing under reports to the board, we'll have our board committee reports. Dr. Zedmeyer, would you like to begin, please?
Dr. Willow and the CNI team met at Hicks last week. Thank you, Principal Chris Klein, for hosting and your enthusiasm for your students, your staff, and your school. Wow. I even had a chance to see one of my very favorite former students, AP, Katie Gutierrez. That's a double wow for me. Speaking of favorites, my favorite supervisor of ELA and social studies provided the skinny on selecting high-quality materials in the middle and high school ELA materials that were approved this evening. Thanks, Carly Pumphrey. Dr. Willow presented information regarding the middle school science renewals and our latest on the Tango Flight CTE programs to be housed at Williamsport. Yep, we're going to build a plane. Since my husband built our first plane, I know firsthand what an incredible STEM project this is going to be. As a pilot and a mother of pilots, I also know that who had to pay the full price of admission. I'm thrilled that this program is available to our kids, and thanks to Adam Perry, our acting CTE supervisor, whose brainchild this is. Our next meeting is March 12th at 11 a.m. at Bester. Thank you, President Williams.
Thank you. Did you say 11?
Uh-huh.
Thanks. Facilities.
Well,
Mr.
thank you.
Gansford?
Yes, so not much to report. We did have our meeting, and we went over numerous new developments and updated the developments that are being proposed in the community. So we got those reports. Our next facility meeting will be March the 26th at, it'll probably be 1 o'clock.
Thank you. Mr. Bickford, Finance?
Finance met February 7th. We were given introductions to some of the new finance team members. We had an extensive review of all of the grant fundings, as well as reviewed the budget adjustments that were presented this evening. And we are meeting again April 10th at 1 p.m.
Thank you. Human Resources, Mrs. Murray?
Human Resources will not be meeting again until June, so I don't have anything to report.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stelter, Policy Review and Development?
I'm going to be quite honest with you. I'm not used to giving reports because I've never been chair of a committee, but I can tell you our next policy meeting is, correct me if I'm wrong, March the 7th at 1 o'clock. And we'll be continuing the grinding work of examining policies, reformatting them, bringing them in conjunction with laws after the General Assembly is passed or is finished, and so forth. So that's it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Snyder, Student Government?
Yeah, the Maryland Association of Student Councils is holding their annual convention, and that is going to be next week from the 29th to March 2nd, I believe. I will be attending along with a large delegation of, I believe, over 20 students from Washington County, so I'm very excited for that.
That's exciting. Okay, that concludes our committee reports. Under miscellaneous business, we have, as always, future agenda items. We have quite an extensive list, 14 items covering our March meetings. I'm not going to read all of them. I would like to highlight the work session that we're having on March 5th, though. We're going to, Dr. Savine, correct me if I'm wrong, in addition to being updated with regard to what's happening with leadership development in WCPS, we'll also hear about our current plan for interventions for the next year and what the point of focus will be, what's happening currently and what's going to be happening next year, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We will focus on our literacy, in particular our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 supports. I know we've had several citizens comment regarding training, in particular with dyslexia, and that will be a part of that work session. It represents the ongoing work of our special ed team, Dr. Brunson, as well as our curriculum instruction team led by Dr. Willow and Mrs. Pumphrey. They will go into detail regarding our plan. Many of the training sessions it's been mentioned, it's already in place, and there are plans to enhance that for next year. So the board will be able to participate in that work session, ask questions, and certainly it's open to the public. We welcome those that may have an interest in that area.
Okay, thank you. And I would just like to highlight two other agenda items for our March 19th business meeting, we'll be hearing the recommendation of the Budget Advocacy and Review Committee relative to the draft budget that we just adopted this evening, along with, during that meeting, we'll recess that meeting, hold a public hearing on the board's draft general fund operating budget, and then we will resume our business meeting. So 2 important things happening with regard to the budget on March 19th. The recommendation from the BARC and the public hearing. So the rest are there for you to read at your leisure. That brings us to board member comments. Mr. Snyder, would you like to begin down there?
Absolutely.
Thank
I just
you.
wanted to kind of go back to a very long ago beginning of the meeting where we recognized the Eastern Elementary Eagle Academy Gifted and Talented program, and I just wanted to specifically kind of bring to mention that a couple of the students and the teacher featured in the video highlighted that the program doesn't just benefit the students in the program, but it benefits students outside of the program and the greater school community, which I think is really important. I think it's something to really emphasize and to focus on and to replicate in any gifted and talented program, any specialized program in education. I know that growing up, or in general now, it's a sentiment that programs can kind of feel over-focused and that things can be specialized on just the program, and kids outside of the program don't feel like they're getting the same attention. So I think that it's really key that students outside of programs feel the benefits and they see and they can experience the same resources. And I think that the teachers at Eastern are really doing it right, and I think that it's really commendable what they're doing, and I think that it's a great thing that they're broadening the program to more than just the students in it.
Thank you. Mrs. Murray.
I want to thank Mrs. Katie Bell for inviting me to her social studies class at Springfield Middle School. I learned how McDonald's is achieving globalization by differentiating their menu in countries around the world. So anytime I can learn something new, I'm happy. And I want to thank all of the speakers that we had here this evening, and also to my colleagues for a day of constructive meetings, but it was long. Good night.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Mr. Bickford.
Since it was long, no comments from me.
Thank you. Mr. Stauffer?
I just want to congratulate Kirk Downey. Kirk, I attended his investiture as circuit court judge. Kirk is a former student of mine at Williamsport High School. I had him in government as what I refer to as an underclassman, a sophomore, and then I had him in advanced placement American history. And he will do an excellent job. And I'm proud to say that that's 2 of my former students, not that I necessarily had anything to do with their achievements, but I had another student who's a federal district court judge, Gina Grow, in Martinsburg, West Virginia, in the federal district court over there. So very proud of those.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Mr. Gaspar?
Nothing tonight.
Nothing. Mr. Evans?
Well, I think I just heard the timer shut off the air conditioner, and it's getting long past my bedtime, so I'll pass.
Thank you.
I'll abbreviate too.
Dr.
But I
Zahn.
did want to say thank you to Dr. Henson and the staff of MK Dowd for these awesome scarves just in time for the snow. They're much appreciated. Mark your calendars now. Dowd's art show is March 27th, 6 to 7:30, and you will not be disappointed if you go. And also, congratulations to the We the People champs. I was fortunate enough to work with them when I was at Boonesboro, so I know what a fabulous program that is. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to just extend congratulations to a former colleague. Lynn Wilcox and I worked together at Winter Street many moons ago. I was the student achievement specialist there, and Lynn was a classroom teacher, so I'm just thrilled for her and her recognition. So congratulations again to Lynn. There was something else that I wanted to say, but I can't remember it, and that's probably due to the lateness of the hour. So thank you all for your work today. It has been a long day, but a productive one. So if there's nothing further, Dr. Savine, did you have anything that you wanted to say? No? Okay. If there's nothing further, then we'll adjourn. Thank you all.